Amidst a ruined city, a 34-year-old man stands. To him, this is hell. Clutching his sword, he questioned where his path had truly strayed. Could early mastery of the blade have saved his sister from the Empire? Perhaps then, he wouldn't be this monster. He was just so incredibly tired. A dark-haired girl watched him as he drifted into memories of his savior. Those were his golden years. To him, that man was more than a master. He sighed. If only he had known the weight of his future regrets. Drenched in grime and ink, the warrior slumped over his blade, gasping. Surveying the carnage, he felt no joy. Then a sudden presence alerted him. A small boy approached, leveling a trembling sword at the legendary slayer. It was a pathetic sight. "Go home, brat. I have no business with children." The child didn't flinch. You're the one who murdered my father." For a second, pity stirred, then he scoffed. "Monster," the boy cried out. The word bit deep, yet monster was a title he had long embraced. His focus shifted as agony began to ripple through his broken frame. His mind felt like melting glass. Every fiber begged for the sweet release of death. He locked eyes with the blonde boy. "A monster, you say?" "Indeed. I alone slaughtered the masters and erased the Tulkun Empire's lineage." "Do you know how many thousands I've sent to the grave?" The boy froze. He gave a twisted grin. "Hundreds of thousands, every last one of them." A true demon stood before him. The boy's blade shook with primal terror. Reminded of his own youth, he asked, "What is your name, little one?" "Jack Stewart," the boy whispered. The warrior's expression turned to stone. A dark chuckle escaped his lips. "How ironic, my name is also Jack." He laughed louder. "I've killed many, but I recall no Stewart among them." "He was my father," the boy sobbed. Envy pricked at the warrior's cold heart. No apologies would come. Instead, he offered the boy a single, final choice. He gestured to the cold steel. "Here, drive your blade through my heart." Cold sweat poured down his face. He felt more lost than ever before. "Kill me. Become the hero who slew the monster before I escape." But deep down, vengeance was not the salvation he truly sought. He taunted the child until the sword rose, then fell. Jack collapsed, weeping. Seeing those tears, the man realized the boy lacked the soul of a killer. He gently patted the boy's head. "Good. Blood only brings a lifetime of nightmares. Heroes carry heavy names. Live for yourself. Live without the weight of regret." Unlike him, this child still had a future. The boy could only weep. The warrior's iron will finally began to crumble into the dust. "Tell them the demon is dead. The war is over." The boy asked, "Why?" He reached for words of explanation, but his strength failed. He collapsed. This was the curtain call. Life was escaping him like air from a balloon. Darkness encroached. His eyes grew heavy and his breath finally ceased. The world faded into silence. In that final heartbeat, one thought remained. If he could return to the beginning, could he rewrite this tragic end? Suddenly, he was adrift in a dream. He was a small child again. He saw his father's cold eyes and remembered his mother's tragic passing. His sister's legendary beauty and his half-brother's cruel torment. Every memory surged back with crystal clarity. Casting aside the name Jack Valant, he had lived as a wandering master of the blade. Visions of his past collided, leaving him wondering if this was reality or a lingering fever dream. Had death truly claimed him, or was this a final hallucination? The frail boy stood trembling near a breakdown. Blood-soaked memories of the Second Continental War flooded his consciousness. He was the ultimate victor, a cold-blooded sovereign, and the most terrifying beast among monsters. Fueled by sheer vengeance, he had raised the Tulkun Empire and purged every soul carrying that name. With his bloody goals fulfilled, he welcomed the cold embrace of death, having no reason to remain. His heart had ceased its beat. Yet, if he was truly dead, what was this impossible reality? This small, fragile child was none other than Jack himself, returned to a time long since past. Desperation gripped him as he pinched his skin, praying this wasn't some cruel, lingering illusion. He was back in the Valant Marco estate, a prestigious house known for its absolute loyalty to the king. The youngest of his siblings, he held the lowliest position in a family blessed with the Marquess title. Had he not hungered for the Harris title, his life might have been easy, but this house was different. Walking through the familiar rose garden, the boy gazed at the annex hidden in the property's furthest corner. Despite its outward splendor, the entire place was a carefully crafted illusion. This was a place of exile, designed to seal the youngest son away without any support or servants. This was the true, cold rose garden. A sudden voice shattered his thoughts, announcing a refreshment had been brought for him. It was Ron, the only butler who ever showed him kindness. Jack remembered him as a sharp, clever man. Accepting the drink, the young master jokingly asked if there was any poison hidden within the glass. The butler panicked until Jack revealed the jest. Ron chuckled, telling the boy not to tease him before departing. Aside from the protagonist, 11 people were stationed within that silent garden. One was the butler, while the other 10 were sentinels keeping a constant watch over him. Besides his caretaker, no one else dared approach, granting him a peculiar and lonely sense of freedom. The reality of his regression was undeniable. It had been barely an hour since he realized he'd returned. With no grand plan in mind, he found himself trapped in his 14-year-old body once again. His palms were soft, lacking any warrior's calluses, and his mana heart had yet to be formed. Compared to other noble heirs, he was woefully inadequate, for he possessed no trace of mana back then. As he pondered, a shadow loomed behind him. Suddenly, a heavy blow struck his head, blurring his vision. He had let his guard down. It had been decades since anyone had dared to strike him. A sneering voice remarked that a dog should never be disturbed while it is eating. Looking at the shattered glass, Jack felt a familiar tremor. His dark-haired brother barked a demand for a greeting. 𝒓𝒏𝒉𝒕, the second son and Jack's primary tormentor, was the sole reason he could never train mana. Bound by that bastard's constant abuse and threats, his potential had been ruthlessly stifled. The boy glared with simmering hatred. Even after lifetimes, his brother's face remained etched in his mind. A vivid memory flashed, the day Phelan had poured a scalding drink over his head. He had been called a worthless defect, forbidden from ever learning the arts of power. Neither swords nor magic were allowed. Any attempt would be branded as betrayal, giving Phelan an excuse to kill. He was warned that while under this roof, he would only survive on whatever scraps were thrown his way. Laughing, the scumbag suggested things might change with absolute obedience, perhaps even earning him the title of brother. In his youth, Jack had been pathetically weak, a fact he could no longer deny. Within these walls, everyone viewed him as a stain on the family, the ultimate disgrace of the house. That title was a secret shame. If it ever spread, the third son of the Amaro line would be a joke. Even the lowly servants mocked him, their cruel laughter echoing through the halls of his past. Scorned by all, his misery was orchestrated by the second son and that viper, Count Mantis. Phelan's arrogance was pathetic, especially since the true firstborn of the house was a woman. In that nest of snakes, she was the only soul Jack could truly trust and love. Despite her seniority, the shackles of tradition barred her from claiming the throne she rightfully deserved. A bird in a gilded cage, her beauty meant nothing while her destiny was inked by another's hand. Condemned to a political union, she'd spend her life imprisoned just to preserve the family bloodline. This was the grim reality Jack found upon his miraculous return. And the bastard standing before him was the chief architect of her misery, a true piece of trash. He loathed being seen with the failure and avoided his own sister whenever royalty was watching. Jack wanted to crush him then and there, but Phelan's mockery regarding his eyes broke his focus. Poised to strike, the bully snarled, demanding to know how a weakling dared to glare at him. Before the blow landed, Jack caught his wrist with iron strength, shocking the guards who watched on. Jack stood firm, his soul etched with the vow to never endure such pathetic humiliation again. The man recoiled in disbelief, stunned that a mere insect had dared to parry his might. With lightning speed, Jack floored the bully. Sprawled in the dirt, Phelan shrieked in total confusion. With a cold smirk, Jack asked if the master needed a hand crawling back up. Drawing his blade, Phelan's mana flared as he spat vile insults at the young boy. The guards hesitated to intervene, fearing the master's wrath, a cowardice Jack had fully anticipated. To the reborn knight, this entire confrontation was nothing more than a farce. Ron lunged between them, pleading for restraint and reminding the master that mana wasn't for petty brawls. Ignoring the plea, Phelan struck the loyal servant down just to clear his path of vengeance. As he watched the chaos, Jack recalled that Rom carried shadows of a very deep secret. Pointing a trembling finger, he roared a death threat, but the main character didn't even flinch. Instead, he mocked his brother's wagging tongue, asking if he fought with words rather than steel. As the steel hissed from its sheath, Jack's gaze turned murderous, sensing a truly lethal intent. Though his new body lacked training, his warrior soul knew he would not taste defeat. He lunged at his brother, whose third circle power felt shallow and brittle against Jack's instinct. That ornate sword was wasted on a pampered brat with such amateur, clumsy swordplay. Jack considered ending it instantly, but a simple takedown felt far too merciful for this scum. With a devilish grin, he promised Phelan a lesson in mental fortitude that turned his blood cold. Speechless and terrified, the supposed master could only sputter out incoherent, pathetic curses. Realizing Phelan's mana didn't protect his skull, Jack slammed his palm into that arrogant, shameless face. Zero remorse. It was time to repay every ounce of past agony back to this miserable coward. Every strike shattered Phelan's balance until he collapsed into the mud like a beaten dog. Surveying the motionless body, Jack wondered if the trash had finally reached its ultimate expiration date. The spectators froze in awe, witnessing a monstrous power they never thought the boy possessed. Noticing a guard reaching for a spear, Jack's commanding voice cut through the air like a blade. He warned them, obey his orders immediately or join his brother in the dirt. The guards scattered instantly. Settled, Jack turned back to the heap of meat, grabbing his hair. Dragging the carcass across the stones, he mused that the master had grown quite fat on arrogance. Phelan could only groan in agony. Halting by the fountain, Jack noted the heat and offered his dear brother a refreshing dip. He plunged the bastard's head underwater, leaving him unable to summon even a spark of his mana. Amidst the struggle, Jack's mind burned with the memory of every sin committed by this monster. After selling their sister, Phelan poisoned their father to seize a throne built on pure cruelty. The outcome was undeniable. He had achieved absolutely nothing. The Marcus bloodline vanished like smoke, yet the main character sought no vengeance. Rage ignited within him as he recalled her wasted, noble sacrifice. She was brilliant and graceful. Her despair upon reaching the Empire was unimaginable. For family glory, she walked into that hell, fully aware of her fate. Her captor was the fourth prince, a man infamous for his vile depravity. At the altar, he spat that she was no wife. Obey and smile. Bound by love for her kin, she endured every single humiliation in silence. Had their father known her tragic end, the world would have burned. Jack suppressed his fury. Below him, the coward begged for life like a worm. Years as a monster had made Jack immune to such pathetic, desperate pleas. It was the look of every soul teetering on the edge of death. "Recall every insult you spat," Jack whispered. "I'll jog your memory right now." He deserved to experience that crushing agony firsthand. Only then would he cherish family. Those words struck terror into Phelan's soul. Jack's fist rose, demanding an answer. Finally, the man broke, howling for mercy. The boy only paused when a third voice joined the desperate, tearful plea. From the gazebo, Rom begged for an end. Jack merely let out a sigh. He slammed his brother's head against the stone, before discarding him like trash. Jack barked at a trembling guard. "Dispose of this dead weight immediately. Get moving." He wanted the filth gone. The butler rushed over, frantic for the young master. Ron stared in shock. He couldn't recognize the ruthless boy standing before him. Whispers of the incident spread like wildfire, plunging the mansion into utter chaos. 2 servants dragged Phelan's broken, bloody body back into the main house. A noblewoman fainted at the sight. The Marquis heir now lay broken and terrified. In this madness, the very air of the estate felt fractured and wrong. Amid the turmoil, Jack calmly ate cake in his room, completely unbothered. Servants whispered, how did he crush a level 3 mage at age 17? Jack possessed no known training. Was he concealing a monstrous, hidden power? Why choose this exact moment to unleash his true, terrifying potential? With the ceremony approaching, did Jack finally set his sights on the leadership? News reached the Lord. He immediately summoned his mysterious 3rd son for an audience. Jack simply kept enjoying his sweet dessert. He praised the butler's skill until a maid arrived with a shocking message. The Lord demands your presence in the main hall, Ron announced quite solemnly. Jack stood up, refusing an escort. He wasn't a helpless little child anymore. The butler bowed. Walking the massive palace, Jack felt countless eyes tracking him. It felt bizarre. Being treated like a ghost was a distant, bitter memory. He wanted this over. At the great doors, guards crossed spears, blocking him. They ignored him entirely. Jack tried being polite, but their arrogance remained unshaken. He swept their legs out. Are you both deaf and blind? He asked coldly. The old Jack would have flinched and retreated from their contemptuous, sharp glares. But that weak coward was long gone now. Fix those faces before I break them, he smiled. The guards froze in disbelief. He shattered the guard's knee with a kick. I won't ask twice. Jack calmly explained he was summoned by the Marquis, demanding to know why they barred his path. The guard's voice trembled as he stammered excuses, confirming Jack's suspicion. This was a pathetic attempt to waste his time. They likely expected him to beg for entrance, hoping to force a disgraceful display of repentance from the boy. But Jack simply turned his back on the servant without a second thought. When asked where he was going, his sharp retort left the gatekeeper completely stunned and speechless. He told them to inform the Lord that if he wanted to talk, he could visit Jack's room. His patience had finally snapped. The report reached the Lord's office quickly. A servant bowed low, apologetically explaining that the young master had simply walked away. A thin smirk played on the Marquis's lips. His youngest son was certainly not the weakling he remembered. Meanwhile, lounging in the rose garden, Jack enjoyed a snack, knowing his father wouldn't stay away for long. Shadows shifted on the horizon. Speak of the devil, the Lord appeared, trailing his usual parade of sycophants and relatives. That stubborn arrogance was still written across the man's face. Jack laughed. Some things never change, even after a lifetime. To Jack, this man was a ghost, the very monster who had orchestrated his demise in his previous life. He was the type of parent who would trade his own flesh and blood for a shred of power. Driven by a bottomless hunger for reach, the man was blinded by his own hollow, desperate ambitions. He greeted the man he could never call father, but the Marquis cut him off, demanding to know his motives. Jack merely tilted his head, coolly asking what the old man was even talking about. That triggered a purple-haired noblewoman, who shrieked in outrage at how Jack dared address the Lord so casually. Ignoring her, Jack suggested they move inside for comfort, though he didn't mind staying out in the dirt. Suddenly, a crushing wave of mana erupted from the Marquis, a blatant attempt to see if Jack had awakened his core. Sensing nothing, the man noted Jack's newfound physical prowess and demanded to know why he had hidden his talent. The truth would sound like madness. After all, how could he explain he was a regressor from the future? I simply didn't feel like it, Jack shrugged. The noblewoman began barking again, calling him a low-born, insolent brat. A single command from the Lord silenced her. He remarked that perhaps the boy wasn't the disappointment he once believed. Rage flared in Jack's chest. Was his worth as a son truly measured only by his utility in battle? When asked if he craved the Marquis's official recognition, Jack scoffed. Such trivial titles meant nothing to him now. The old man turned without another word, seemingly satisfied with his son's defiance, and marched away. Jack watched the procession retreat. He couldn't fathom why the man came all this way just to leave so easily. Then his eyes fell upon his bitter stepmother. Jack smirked, noting that her son's recent failure had added many wrinkles to her face, advising her to rest more. Her face contorted with fury, nearly snapping her fan. Seeing that vile woman's composure crumble was absolutely delicious to Jack. He stood up slowly. With a mocking bow, he asked her to send his warmest regards to her precious second son. Back in his room, the butler announced his punishment: 20 days of solitary confinement for the chaos he had caused. Ron hesitated, desperate to know what happened, but Jack silenced him, focused entirely on the sketches before him. Ron wouldn't have cared if Jack had been beaten to a pulp, so why the sudden concern now? Pausing his pen, the boy pondered the irony of his upcoming sentence. He was already an outcast in this rose garden. To him, solitary confinement was just another quiet room to plan. The butler sighed, noting the academy break was nearly over, and Jack was already landing himself in a cell. Jack froze. In the midst of war and rebirth, the mundane concept of school had completely slipped his mind. At 14 years old, he was legally bound to attend the prestigious Imperial Academy. Every noble in the Teslan Empire was required to attend. Unless you were disabled, daily presence was strictly mandatory. It was a 4-year grind, and Jack was currently stuck in the middle of his freshman term. With the first semester concluded, summer break was his only reprieve. Being a student again felt like a bizarre dream. His instructors had academy ties, meaning he could bypass lectures, except for hers. He had no time for father's games. Logic dictated his next move. He had 27 days of freedom left before returning to the lion's den. 20 days would be spent in a cage, with 6 more for the journey. He was to be shipped to the academy the moment he smelled freedom. Even with the memories of a past life, his own path was a mystery. A weary Ron eventually asked if the young master's painting was complete. Jack rose from his seat, his fingers lingering on the easel as he inquired about the location of his upcoming imprisonment. The servant's hesitant silence quickly grated on the main character's nerves, prompting him to demand an answer with cold intensity. The blonde explained the grim reality. There was only one dungeon for the condemned, the pits reserved for criminals of the Marcus domain. Jack was momentarily stunned. He sought confirmation, barely believing he'd be tossed into a cell. The answer was a predictable, heavy yes. Even so, a sharp growl of fury escaped him. He hadn't realized that senile old man was actually bold enough to pull this. At the academy, vacations weren't for resting. They were a continuation of the struggle. Phelan's broken state was proof enough of that reality. Before the chaos, he was forced into high society galas to mingle with noble bloodlines and face the family's calculating vassals. Jack had always been an outcast to them. He cared nothing for Marcus politics, yet the venomous insults of his relatives ignited his rage. It felt as though he belonged nowhere in this world, and now fate had seen fit to lock him in a grimy, stagnant cell. All because of that foolish patriarch. Jack chose to walk to the dungeon alone, refusing an escort to keep his dignity from shattering. Ron watched his master walk away, his expression twisting into a look of profound and inexplicable pity. He dabbed at his tears, gazing at Jack like a discarded kitten, while the main character simply urged them to quicken the pace. Technically, he was a high-class prisoner. He was granted a bed, a washroom, and 3 daily meals in his solitary confinement. But what use were amenities in a freezing tomb with 50-year-old blankets, and food so vile even the flies wouldn't touch it? Our protagonist simply stood there, crossing his arms in defiance of his surroundings. For a 14-year-old, an entire day trapped with nothing but his own thoughts was a heavy burden to bear. Lords with their own land could bypass imperial law entirely, punishing their subjects according to their own ruthless local statutes. Within these borders, they held the power of an emperor. Jack was a prisoner of the Marcus, yet he remained an aristocrat by blood. He hadn't incited a coup or committed treason, yet the Lord was determined to cage his own son regardless of the cost. He wondered exactly how his father planned to spin this scandal to shield the reputation of his precious second son. They might claim Jack used lethal poisons or forbidden artifacts, though even for them, that seemed a bit over the top. The Marcus family likely crafted a perfect lie. 𝒏𝒊𝒈, the house disgrace, had dabbled in forbidden magic out of sheer greed. Then the story would claim the second son, 𝒓𝒉, discovered the truth and tried to lead his brother back to righteousness. But the boy was too far gone. To hide his tracks, Jack supposedly turned his dark arts against his own brother to silence him. Even in his suffering, the heir would be painted as a saint who chose to forgive his foolish, wayward younger brother. That disgusting script was probably already spreading through the Marquis' inner circle. The mere thought of their hypocrisy was sickening. A few days of solitude were manageable, but he refused to rot in this mediocre dungeon for his entire precious vacation. He felt no love for this house. He could have escaped instantly, but 3 vital reasons kept him anchored for now. His precious sister, the loyal Ron, and most importantly, the shadow of his legendary master. Furthermore, having returned to his 14-year-old self, he lacked the muscle and raw power to survive the world alone just yet. He understood the absolute law of this world. The strong devour the weak, while the powerless become nothing more than fertilizer. Jack didn't crave a repeat of the massacres from his past life, but he still had a long list of people who needed to pay. To achieve his goals, he required 2 things, time and power. The academy was the perfect shortcut to obtaining both. There, he could buy the time needed to reclaim the terrifying strength he had mastered in his previous existence. Once he reached his peak, he would finally be the shield that Ron, his sister, and his master truly deserved. It was time to reclaim his birthright. As he focused, the faint hum of mana began to swirl around his fingertips. Mana mastery is divided into 10 ranks. Circles 1 through 3 are for novices, while 4 through 6 belong to the specialists. Those who reach the 7th through 9th circles are known as elite high circle users, the true titans of the battlefield. The legendary 10th circle belongs to the superhumans. Pressing his palms to his chest, Jack ignited a brilliant blue spiritual glow. It was a blessing he was alone. It took a mere 2 hours to form his first circle, a testament to his youthful potential. In his past life, he hadn't touched mana until 17. Perhaps his teenage impatience was finally acting as a powerful catalyst. He raised his hand slowly, watching the raw energy pulse with a life of its own. He marveled at his creation for a moment before waving it away, knowing his true power had to stay hidden in the shadows. An eerie clicking echoed through the corridor, mimicking the rhythmic gait of the Marquis' boots. He huddled beneath the rags, faking slumber, yet the footsteps lacked their usual crushing weight. A voice from a distant, tragic lifetime reached his ears, forcing him to bolt upright in shock. Beyond the rusted iron, his sister, 𝒏𝒊𝒈𝒕, stood weeping as she reached out in desperation. Tears blurred his vision. Despite the filth, her heart remained pure and her beauty untarnished. When she whispered his nickname, Jackie, it felt like a long-lost melody from a forgotten era. He pressed her hand against his cheek, offering a gentle smile to ease her crushing anxiety. Elizabeth's voice trembled, questioning why he'd used forbidden magic when she'd promised to teach him herself. Their fingers entwined as he whispered an apology, but she quickly asked why he'd returned early. His sudden silence felt heavy, a chilling stillness that made her heart race with concern. She searched his eyes for truth, but he simply brushed away his tears, claiming he was happy. Her brow furrowed in utter confusion at his strange, radiant expression. How could anyone find joy in this freezing, wretched cage? Jack confessed he was ecstatic she was real. Elizabeth feared his mind had finally snapped. His gaze sharpened with intensity. He was ready to make the proposal he'd carried for lifetimes. Should they escape, he spoke of the nomad forest, where they could farm and cultivate together. She scolded his reckless talk, but Jack knew the dark truth of how they exploited her. It was time to abandon this noble curse and seek a life of quiet tranquility. He dreamed of her finding true love, but his insults toward the Lord triggered her fury. A sharp scream pierced the air as she cut his words short. She begged him to respect their father, for regardless of his sins, he held that title. To her, they were the living proof of the old man's devotion to their departed mother. Though Jack's hatred ran deep, she pleaded with him to endure until she softened the Lord's heart. He simply repeated how joyous it was to see her again, causing her to blush deeply. He stood with purpose, asking her to move back from the iron gate despite her confusion. As she obeyed, raw mana surged around his hand, leaving the young woman stunned and speechless. With a thunderous snap, the lock shattered. Jack stepped out and pulled her into a tearful embrace. She gripped his shoulders, her heart hammering against her ribs at his unrecognizable, strange behavior. He looked at her with clarity, assuring his sister that he was more than fine. Holding her tight, he swore this life would be different and she would never sacrifice herself again. Yet a shadow loomed in his mind, the inevitable arrival of the fourth prince. In that past life, that royal serpent was the one who tore her away from him. That bastard's cruelty forged Jack into a monster, and flashes of his bloody past resurfaced with vengeance. He vividly recalled the moment he finally captured the monarch, pinning him to the torture table. Blazing fury scorched his veins. He would never forgive the Tulkun Empire for their many atrocities. Jack had fled at 17. 10 years later, the world he knew had crumbled into ash. The Taslan kingdom was a ghost. Tulkun reigned supreme over the entire western continent. He clung to the memory of his sister, the only light in that dark, future timeline. Back then, she was the plaything of the fourth prince, forced to beg for her family's lives. But she was never his queen, merely a concubine discarded in the cold shadows of the palace. The arrogant fool had struck her down, yet Elizabeth's kindness never wavered, even in her despair. For 3 days and nights, she knelt in the dirt until his mercy finally broke the silence. That was the lie whispered across the continent. The reality behind his generosity was a total nightmare. Elizabeth had lived in a cycle of false gratitude, never knowing the true depth of his malice. However, the tides of fate had finally shifted. The prince pinned her, whispering that her family's life depended on his whim. He'd crush them the moment it suited his twisted game. She became his mindless puppet, forced to perform exactly as he commanded. He reduced her to a mere plaything, a servant for his darkest desires. The legitimate wives burned with petty envy, tormenting her until he grew bored. Finally, she was cast into a lonely, freezing annex. At that very moment, the prideful house of Marion Valent fell into utter ruin. When Jack returned, only smoldering ash remained of his home. That grief transformed him into a vengeful monster. He swore a blood oath to annihilate the Tulkun Empire and everyone within its reach. His wrath spared no one, purging the royal bloodline and every noble house that supported them. He hunted them until the world was cleansed of their existence. Not a single soul would escape his blade. Back in the present, Jack watches Elizabeth through the bars, vowing never to let history repeat itself. Unaware of his dark past, she only fears for his safety while she confronts their father. He gives a simple nod, hiding his cold resolve. This time, he will burn the world to protect her. As she walks away, she realizes her little brother has become a total stranger. The once timid boy now radiated an overwhelming confidence. He was like a sleeping dragon finally awakening. His mana was breathtaking. Even as a sixth circle mage, she sensed no trace of forbidden corruption. Yet their father reached the seventh circle. How could he possibly miss this soaring power? Elizabeth finds her father brooding over tea, pleading for Jack's freedom and defending his innocence. She dismissed forbidden magic as mere folklore. How could a young boy master such ancient darkness? She assumed his arrest was a calculated move to keep their secrets hidden from the public. When she claimed Jack had no desire for the title, the Lord's fury flared. She realized Jack's suffering was a leash for her own heart. Her sharp insight left her father stunned. He hadn't realized how quickly his tool had sharpened. She was trapped in the Marquis's cold machinations. It was a brutal warning. Jack's life was the price she would pay for any defiance. The Lord coldly declared that Jack was a stain on their noble bloodline. Once he comes of age, he'll be erased from history and exiled. Elizabeth froze, her hope turning to ice. He commanded her to remember her duty. Her future was already carved in stone. She looked at him, seeing only a heartless monster guarding his own power. The Lord mused how a boy with 0 circles crushed a 3rd circle warrior. Elizabeth's heart skipped a beat. 0 circles. She saw his power with her own eyes, but the Lord ended the talk by granting her request. She bowed out quietly, offering shallow thanks for his hollow mercy. The moment the door closed, her strength vanished. She remembered his offer to flee, knowing it was a beautiful dream. Collapsing in the hallway, she wept in total despair while the morning sun bathed Jack in gold. His sleep was haunted by ghosts of his previous life, stirred by the unfamiliar prison cell. Reflection ended when a guard rattled the bars, announcing his unexpected release. Jack rose with a sharp smirk, joking that he'd actually grown fond of the solitude. The guard handed him his clothes, but refused to bring his shoes, claiming they were out of stock. That petty disrespect pushed the main character over the edge. He snarled at the guard, his mana flaring dangerously. Before the man could apologize, Jack's fist glowed with lethal energy. The child struck with savage precision, teaching the servant the true meaning of fear. Later, dressed for the palace, Jack was greeted by a frantic Ron. The butler rushed to him, eyes scanning for any wounds on his young master's body. Seeing ink splattered on his tunic, Ron panicked, but Jack calmly told him it wasn't his own blood. However, the atmosphere grew heavy. He noticed the estate was crawling with guards, including 10 foot soldiers and a squire from the Iron Blood Knights. One squire stood out, his armor shining brilliantly while his face remained a mask of grim stone. Poor soul, Jack sighs, pitying a knight whose potential was wasted as a noble's lowly babysitter. This wasn't the glorious future he imagined when first taking his knightly vows. Noting his sharp, tense gaze, Jack realizes the blonde knight already knew of his earlier imprisonment. The knight approaches with a stiff bow, respectfully asking for the truth behind the prison incident. Jack is stunned. This warrior was far more courteous than he ever could have anticipated. The blonde adds that reports describe the boy brutally tearing out a guard's eye and fingers. Ron bristles with fury, immediately declaring it impossible for the young master to commit such atrocities. Yet the knight persists, demanding to know why his fellow soldier was so savagely attacked. Jack lets out a dry, mocking laugh, spitting out the word squire like a vile insult. His eyes scan the knight, calculating his mana capacity to estimate his current circle rank. 4th circle, likely. He coldly suggests the dog should learn its place before its masters. The knight flinches at the harsh words, while Ron offers a stern scolding for the disrespect. Irritated, Jack snaps that the man's only function here is to keep watch in silence. He had plenty of chores to finish. Like cleaning everything himself, but he shouldn't dare speak of rights. If he wants to be a knight, he should just pray. The knight bows in total submission, desperately pleading for the young master's forgiveness. That submissive display brings a smirk to the boy's face. His new dog was perfectly trained. Satisfied, he turns away, ordering the squire to report back once this mess is fully resolved. Any grievances could be taken up directly with the Marquis himself. He adds that his new nickname is Chick, then he and Ron vanish into the palace. Hearing his stomach growl, the protagonist tells Ron he's craving a feast of high-quality meat. The loyal servant bows, promising to fulfill his master's culinary desires immediately. A magnificent meal is prepared, and as the boy eats, he praises Ron's incredible kitchen talents. Sensing the heavy tension, Jack tells the butler to speak up instead of staring so intensely. Ron hesitates, but the boy casually offers him some meat, inviting him to eat together. However, the butler simply cannot accept. Questioning how a servant could dine with his master, Jack just tells him to sit and listen. The man finally yields. Straight to the point, Jack asks about his sister Elizabeth's true condition. Ron claims Elizabeth is the same as always, but his eyes flicker with a child's vulnerability. Jack's words turn sharp as a blade, warning Ron not to play him for a fool. He knows Ron understands her suffering better than anyone, a truth that makes the man tremble. Ron tries to maintain his lie, but the boy's cold gaze cuts him off instantly. He praises the food again, recalling how Ron tasted every meal for poison during his childhood. The butler is stunned by this revelation, but the young master isn't finished yet. He also knew that Ron was secretly a high-level circle mage. Once again, the butler is caught off guard by the boy's impossible depth of knowledge. Jack mentions that as his mother's former attendant, Ron must remember her, though she's long gone. Seeing her resemblance in Elizabeth, Jack concludes that his mother must have been a saintly person. He confirms Ron was her shadow protector, a high-circle mage disguised as a mere escort. If this were some fantasy novel, he'd have mocked the plot for being too unrealistic. But this was his reality. He remembers fleeing his past life, pursued by his father's assassins. The torrential rain, that night only intensified the suffocating dread of their desperate escape. Those pursuers were elite Iron Blood Knights, just like that pathetic chick from earlier. The Marquis had actually sent those executioners to murder his own biological son. Facing a Ninth Circle swordsman, Ron sacrificed himself, unleashing a cataclysm of mana to save him. Fear gripped Jack. He realized this man was the legendary Ninth Circle mage who once guarded his mother. He knew her true identity was no mere commoner, a secret even the Marquis failed to grasp. It was a mystery, hidden even from the eyes of the family butler. Jack decided to let the past sleep. Only the man's loyalty in the present truly mattered now. When asked for his desire, Jack's request was simple. "Protect my sister. You're the only one I trust." It was a bizarre request. At 18, Elizabeth was already a Sixth Circle genius, fully capable of self-defense. Yet Jack knew her heart was far too kind, always choosing sacrifice over her own well-being. Such martyrdom served the Marquis's cold ambitions, but it was a life Jack refused for her. "I leave for the academy tomorrow," he declared, "and I won't return unless a true catastrophe strikes." For 4 long years, he needed a faithful guardian to stand by her side in his absence. Afterward, Ron would be free. A shadow crossed the man's face as he questioned his own purpose. Jack wasn't talking about hiding in the shadows, but finding the path his soul truly desired. However, the servant couldn't help but wonder, why exactly 4 years at the prestigious academy? "Only then will I be strong enough to protect her myself," Jack stated, before an intruder interrupted. Even at such a critical moment, the newcomer's arrival couldn't simply be ignored. It was the chick, arriving with a self-important air to deliver his latest report. The injured guard had received basic healing and was being moved for further medical treatment. Jack feigned concern, fueling the blonde man's pathetic whining about a clumsy accident involving a fallen dagger. "Good work," Jack smirked, asking if the little dog wanted a bone, an insult the man quickly rejected. He addressed him mockingly as Chick. Ignoring James Ken's corrections, Jack then demanded a real steel sword and a wooden training blade. The squire's pride flared. He was no messenger boy. Jack just smiled, asking if the chick harbored resentment. With a wicked grin, Jack suggested this was the perfect opportunity for the squire to beat him. Ron bolted upright in shock, while James stammered, unable to believe the boy was actually serious. Showing his slender, inexperienced hands, Jack invited the man to strike him freely in a duel. Stunned, the squire asked if the young master truly wanted him as a fencing instructor. Jack roared with laughter, calling it the funniest joke he'd heard, then ordered him to fetch the blades. Once James left, the butler voiced his concern. Could the boy really handle a Fourth Circle opponent? Unfazed and brimming with confidence, Jack didn't just ignore the danger. He proposed a daring bet. Ron pondered this, suggesting they wager on how many blows Jack would endure before the duel ended. Even with Jack's bravado on full display, Ron felt compelled to warn him that the squire's power was in a completely different league. It was clear the butler didn't trust the boy's current combat skills one bit. "If he lands even a single blow, you win," Jack declared, leaving the butler absolutely speechless. The stakes were set. The loser would have to grant any wish the winner desired. A wave of sadness hit the man. As a servant, he'd fulfill any order without a wager. But that sentiment only fueled Jack's desire to toy with the poor man's heart even more. Jack pointed a fork at him, reaffirming his absolute trust, only to be scolded for poor manners. However, Ron's eyes gleamed with hidden joy. Jack smiled innocently, claiming he never gave orders to those he trusted. He didn't want a servant. He wanted a favor from the only man he could truly rely on. The butler's eyes shimmered with emotion. Spoken like that, refusal was simply impossible for him. Their moment was shattered as James returned, begging on his knees for forgiveness and a chance to reconsider. There were countless chicks in this mansion who dared to disrespect Jack behind his back. But physical violence was a different matter. The guard feared the consequences of laying hands on him. So that explained his desperate plea while on bended knee. Jack proposed a secret duel away from prying eyes, leaving the squire utterly baffled. Smirking with absolute superiority, the young master taunted him, asking if a grown knight feared a mere child. The knight recoiled in denial, but Jack pushed harder. "You really think you can take me?" He studied the blonde's arrogant face. The answer was written in his eyes. He was certain. Jack turned to Ron, demanding a private training ground. The startled butler could not refuse his master's command. Deep within the mansions, shadows lay a forgotten, secret basement. The chamber was a hidden armory, stocked with pristine blades and combat gear. Jack questioned if Ron trained here, but the butler revealed it was his mother's gift to her sons. When Jack asked why he was never told, Ron noted his previous lack of interest in training. Despite years of neglect, the room gleamed. Someone had been meticulously maintaining this secret sanctuary. Jack offered a rare smile of gratitude, warming the loyal servant's heart with acknowledged pride. He turned his gaze toward the trembling fledgling, demanding the training sword with an outstretched hand. The squire hesitated, but the boy's relentless pressure left him no choice but to obey. He surrendered the wooden blade with shaking hands. The squire noted Jack held it with uncanny expertise. That observation caused a predatory smirk to dance across the main character's lips. He had slain enough foes in his past life to touch the stars. "Don't hold back," he warned. The duel ignited. Jack Kent lunged, but his opponent moved with fluid, practiced ease. Confidence filled the night, until Jack's blade suddenly kissed his throat with lethal precision. Time stood still. The knight gasped, unable to fathom his instantaneous defeat. Ron's voice broke the silence, warning that a real blade would have ended his life there. He had survived only because the young master was not truly trying yet. Speechless and shaken, the blonde wondered if this was truly the boy's first time wielding steel. Even Ron felt a chill. Moments ago, the squire seemed to have the upper hand. Though the impact was light, no 14-year-old should possess such terrifying hidden strength. By all logic, the boy should have been disarmed and eating dirt by now. Instead, the brat showcased godly form. Against a real blade, James would be a corpse. What had happened to Jack? Was this the awakening of an unprecedented sword genius? No, even a genius had limits. Breaking the silence, Jack asked if the squire was in his 20s. 23, he replied, prompting Jack to inquire when his mana training had first begun. He started at 18. Jack grinned like a madman. The fourth circle in just 5 years. Despite the late start, the squire possessed undeniable and raw potential. Sensing his internal flow, Jack saw a path to the 8th circle, a gateway to legendary status. Without a word, Jack discarded the wooden toy, leaving James paralyzed with confusion. Drawing cold steel, Jack mused how tragic it was to waste such talent on babysitting duties. The knight warned of the danger, but Jack merely scoffed at the perceived threat. Jack laughed maniacally before turning ice cold. There is a fine line between arrogance and true power. Do you truly believe my victory was a mere stroke of luck? Jack demanded. The squire's blood boiled in silence. Jack sneered. This is why you are still just a fledgling. Your turn to strike, Jack beckoned. The man's teeth ground together in a fit of rage. He charged blindly, proving just how easily he could be manipulated by a simple taunt. Clang, James was disarmed again, Jack's blade at his chin. That is 2 strikes, knight, he chirped. Furiously, the knight demanded to know how a mere child could possess such overwhelming skill. Jack feigned innocence, claiming he simply adjusted his trajectory as their steel finally met. But the knight refused to back down, desperate to uncover the secret behind Jack's divine technique. Jack smirked, flaunting his mastery of the high-tier art and taunting the knight for an encore. Trembling with wounded pride, the knight unsheathed cold steel, desperate to reclaim his shattered honor. The main character turned to Ron, claiming his prize, as the old master bowed in total submission. His command was absolute: protect Elizabeth at all costs, testing if the servant's loyalty was truly ironclad. The man hesitated for a heartbeat before swearing to shield her, even if it meant his death. Shifting focus, the knight prepared for a true clash, igniting his mana to match the boy's pressure. Jack welcomed the challenge, urging him forward, only to effortlessly deflect the knight's desperate opening strike. The boy's mana surged like a blade through skin, crushing the knight until Jack's boot met his chest. Gasping for air, the defeated man couldn't fathom how a mere first circle possessed such monstrous strength. It was a logical nightmare. A novice had just dismantled a seasoned warrior with terrifying ease. The secret lay in Jack's precision, concentrating his entire mana pool into a single point of absolute destruction. Ignoring the confusion, Jack threw a chilling question. Did the squire truly desire to become a knight? The man blinked in a daze, wondering if his current status was nothing but a hollow lie. Then came the dark invitation. Jack proposed the blonde become his loyal hunting dog instead of a knight. James recoiled, his pride stinging at the thought of being treated like a mere beast of burden. But Jack pressed on, promising a life of glory far beyond the reach of any common, pathetic knight. Seeing the man waver, he demanded to know the price of his soul, disappointing Jack with his shallow greed and lack of vision. Overlooking his flaws, the main character promised him absolute power and authority in exchange for total obedience. His role was simple: become the shadow that erases every obstacle in his master's path. The cold declaration left them breathless, and the knight's first thought was of who must be eliminated. Jack pointed toward the crippled Phelan, granting the man a single day to decide his own destiny. Later that night, within the quiet sanctuary of his room, the main character spoke with Ron. The butler warned that trusting a snake like James was a gamble that could reach the Marchioness. Jack's laughter echoed, ignoring the warning that the woman was a predator waiting for her chance to strike. With the academy entrance looming tomorrow, Ron feared she would move to extinguish the boy's light forever. Yet the main character remained unshaken, knowing her malice was held in check by her own political web. Since the tragedy at the lake, his older brother had become a broken shell, terrified of the water. She was trapped in her own schemes, so Jack ordered Ron to watch her and the Lord's influence. In this storm of internal conflict, she wouldn't dare risk a direct move against her own blood. Ron remained skeptical, his voice heavy with concern as he questioned the boy's reckless confidence. Jack retorted, asking if he truly thought the Marquess would permit such a blatant act of betrayal now. At worst, she might try to break a few bones, but she lacked the power to truly destroy him. Legions of gods and monsters had failed to kill him before. Her petty malice was almost comedic. Ending the discussion, Jack thanked the servant for the relief, and Ron let out a weary sigh. "My destiny belongs to me alone," the young master declared, his eyes flashing with ancient authority. Ron asked if a grand escape was planned, and Jack's playful smirk only deepened the butler's growing anxiety. Jack issued a final secret order: follow him from the shadows tomorrow to witness the coming storm. The butler expected an official escort, but the main character had a much more tactical plan in mind. He bound Ron to a solemn promise to remain unseen, acting as a ghost in the night. Before resting, Jack announced his intent to break through to the second circle in total solitude. Ron gasped, knowing such a feat usually took years, but for this genius it was child's play. Meanwhile, James wandered the halls, his mind haunted by the image of a child with godlike power. He suspected Jack was a hidden third circle, yet the offer of being a dog remained a bitter pill. Unlike his brother, Jack had no faction or vassals, standing alone against the weight of a legendary family. No, the third young master is powerless. Recalling his claims of a grand life brought no comfort to his soul. James realized he had been foolishly moved by the empty promises of a clueless child. He must confess everything to the Marchioness, from Jack's hidden martial genius to their secret basement talk. A blonde maid smirked, plotting to use this chaos to finally earn favor with the powerful Marquis family. Even a genius brat couldn't dismantle the great house of Marco without possessing the strength of a monster. In her chambers, Elizabeth learned her commoner mother had secured her one final, fleeting chance at salvation. The Marchioness dismissed talent as something utterly mundane and trivial. As a mere daughter of the house, only her beauty held value. She stood silent, stung by venomous words. Proffering wine, the woman called her a darling, urging the girl not to hesitate in accepting the vintage. Elizabeth declined at once, stating she dared not drink in the Marchioness's presence. Shrugging, the witch downed her glass instantly and continued her chilling speech. She mentioned the sons of Duke Malone and Assenble were interested, before abruptly pausing to correct herself. The second son is unworthy. The Marchioness promised a superior match, warning Elizabeth to maintain her behavior. Suddenly, she questioned if Elizabeth harbored secret feelings for someone, which the girl frantically denied. A satisfied smile bloomed. If such a person existed, the lady warned, he would vanish without a trace. She then rambled about her younger brother, sensing he was plotting something quite intriguing in the shadows. Jack's name sent a shiver through Elizabeth. She failed to grasp her stepmother's cryptic implications. Aware of Jack's attempt to recruit the knight, she hadn't realized James was already a long-term puppet. Elizabeth recoiled, while the woman cackled like a maniac at the boy's pathetic attempt to overthrow her. His foolish plan is simply comedy. Suddenly, a sinister laugh echoed through the room. Elizabeth's face fell, blaming their parents for Jack's rebellion, yet she remained silent to prevent further wrath. After her fit of laughter subsided, the woman reaffirmed her cold mission to find a suitable political marriage. Yet one final warning remained, masked by a thin veil of motherly concern. Wrapping her arms around Elizabeth's neck, she delivered a chilling threat. Secrets lead to tragic ends. The girl trembled, whispering her submission to the woman's terrifying authority. This obedience delighted the crone, who offered praise before ordering her to prepare for the evening feast. Dejected, Elizabeth obeyed. As twilight descended, the servants hurried to set the stage for the dinner. Soon, the Valent bloodline assembled at the grand table to commence their silent, tension-filled meal. Suddenly, the doors slammed open. Jack strode in uninvited, mockingly asking why the atmosphere felt like a funeral. Every gaze locked onto him. His sister froze while his father's eyes burned with pure, unadulterated loathing. With feigned innocence, the boy demanded his rightful seat as the family's precious third young master. Moments earlier, he was entirely absorbed in perfecting his control over internal mana flow. Two paths of mana existed, one designed to push physical limits to superhuman levels. It boosted intellect and strength. The second path involved shaping mana into complex formulas to manifest magic. Spells like roaring fireballs and freezing ice arrows were classic manifestations of this mystical art. Ron was a skilled circle mage. James reached the fourth circle as a swordsman. Jack followed the blade too, but his magic potential remained. Even now, Mana radiated from his body as he sat calmly upon the bed. The butler watched in awe, revealing it had taken him 2 full months to master the second circle. A remarkable feat, as climbing from the first to the second circle typically takes many months of toil. Without the knowledge of a regressor, 2 months was lightning fast. Smiling, Jack praised the servant's talent. Ron chuckled, noting the irony of receiving praise from a boy who mastered the second circle in hours. Checking the hour, Jack inquired about the time. It was 5:48 in the afternoon, the servant replied. He sprang to his feet, stunned by how swiftly the hours had vanished. Dinner approached, but a simple steak wouldn't suffice, while his arrogant kin feasted in the grand hall. He chose to dine as a true noble, a move Ron considered absolute insanity. The boy feigned compliance, claiming he only wished to announce his departure scheduled for tomorrow. Inside the hall, Jack tore into a chicken leg, savoring the mansion's high-class delicacies with abandon. He boldly praised the meal, but claimed Ron's cooking was superior, sending his relatives into a frenzy. Sated, he thanked them, but his father demanded his purpose. He confirmed he had no other reason to visit this wretched place. Such sheer insolence left the lord convinced his son had truly lost his mind. Undeterred, our protagonist pressed on, mocking the bizarre expression twisted across his father's face. Thick, suffocating tension hung heavily in the air between them. Elizabeth tried to pull Jack away, but the Marquis silenced the room with a cold command for the boy to speak. He declared his departure for the academy tomorrow, unable to endure this gloomy atmosphere any longer. Though the Marquis grudgingly agreed, Jack wasn't seeking permission. He was merely stating his will. To dodge a useless quarrel, Jack offered a hollow smile, feigning gratitude for his father's blessing. With the formalities finished, he turned his gaze toward his brother, who began to tremble uncontrollably. Raising his glass, he noted Phelan's supposed water phobia, mocking how the wretch must be parched. Despite being the brother who once tormented him for sport, Jack still claimed to value their bloodline. With a wicked smirk, he spilled wine across the table, inviting his brother to drink since it wasn't water. Phelan recoiled in pure terror, his composure shattering at his brother's mocking gesture. As Phelan nearly toppled, the Marchioness erupted in fury, screaming at Jack's unthinkable audacity and nerve. Jack simply turned away, his business done, treating her screeching voice like nothing more than a barking cur. He exited amidst a deafening silence, certain his words would haunt those walls for years to come. Seething with rage, the Marchioness vowed retribution, while Jack threw back a mockery, inviting her to try. Her hysterical shrieks echoed through the closed doors, filled with venomous curses and promises of his destruction. Within the corridors, the servants whispered in shock, struggling to process the madness they had just witnessed. Shaking, they focused on their duty, scrubbing the wine-stained cloth to erase the evidence of the clash. Despite the threats, the night passed peacefully, save for a stern lecture from a worried Elizabeth. Come morning, Jack mused over the lackluster preparations for such a supposedly grand departure. Despite the carriage's opulent exterior, it offered nothing but a soft seat and empty luxury. Led by the 6-star knight Rizisson, the escort watched Jack with suspicious eyes, sensing a hidden agenda. To his chagrin, James was also part of the group destined for the academy gates. Elizabeth hovered anxiously, fearing their stepmother's schemes, but Jack firmly declined her offer of protection. Refusing to stay behind, she stubbornly insisted on riding alongside him for his safety. With quiet confidence, he assured her that everything was changing and he was no longer the boy she knew. Furthermore, he was certain that this family no longer possessed the power to crush her spirit. As she followed on horseback with a heavy heart, Jack teased her, asking exactly how far she planned to trail them. Yielding at last, she pleaded for his safety, while Ron watched the departure with a heavy, suspicious gaze. The butler's voice trembled, questioning if Jack was truly ready to leave this den of vipers behind. Ron wore the same look of dread as Elizabeth, only to receive the same unwavering answer. Jack reminded him of their secret pact from the previous night, a mission the loyal servant would never forget. Throughout the trek, 𝒏𝒎𝒚 kept a sharp, wary eye on the boy's every interaction. Once Ron signaled his readiness, Jack ordered him back to guard his sister from the shadows. With a final bow, the servant retreated to the rear, prepared to watch the day's destiny unfold. He considered this a small token of gratitude for the butler who served him with unwavering loyalty. The rhythmic swaying soon brought a yawn to his lips, and the young genius drifted into a peaceful slumber. 𝒓𝒎𝒻 watched the sleeping boy with a cold, predatory intent. Night fell before Jack stirred, demanding why the journey continued. Observing the settling servants, he realized their camp was established. Lethal tension flared between them until the boy suddenly smirked. He mused how his little chick had finally embraced betrayal. Surrounded by guards, escape was now a flickering, distant dream. Jack insisted on a final conversation before their silent journey. A wicked grin revealed their 4-day trek of nightly agony. However, the psychopath promised nightly bone-crushing, followed by forced healing. Unmoved by the promised torture, the boy urged him forward. The Marchioness had ordered the destruction of his secret mana circle. That cruel decree only widened the boy's mysterious, dark smile. Shattering a mana circle was a fate far worse than death. Once destroyed, regaining mana was a 1 in 1,000 miracle. Such a shock often left the victim paralyzed for life. The bastard sneered, revealing he knew of Jack's hidden mastery. He claimed talent was worthless against the weight of absolute authority. He advised total submission to avoid even greater, unnecessary suffering. This murderous atmosphere felt nostalgic, like returning to his roots. Even in peace, the sword ghost's soul remained lethally sharp. Jack's tale of 10 mountain years left the guards bewildered. He spoke of a master who forged his invincible spirit. But descent revealed a fallen kingdom and a ruined family. Indifferent to his lineage, his cryptic words chilled the air. Without answering, he unsheathed his blade with terrifying, singular focus. He hoped Elizabeth's brilliance would lead her to a happier fate. Within the palace, the girl prayed for her brother's survival. Her joy was the only price he sought for forgiveness. The guards laughed, mistaking his resolve for mind-shattering terror. Approaching slowly, Jack whispered that revenge is a maddening nectar. He agreed that simple talent was insufficient for this slaughter. They truly believed a single torture session would break him. Suddenly, the atmosphere warped as his monstrous power finally awakened. With a storm's fury, his mana circle expanded to consume them. The captain scoffed, blind to the boy's true, terrifying depth. Dread struck, failing to stop this child meant certain annihilation. A city-leveling blast erupted, tearing through the night with violence. In that instant, James realized the magnitude of his mistake. Abandoning the valent trash was now a death sentence for them. Time froze as Jack shattered their steel and their pride. The once arrogant knights now lay broken, helpless before a god. Ron emerged, paralyzed by the wake of the boy's destruction. Jack calmly named this technique as the first of 4. 8 transcendent arts from a realm beyond all mortal comprehension. The servant noted the carnage looked less like swordsmanship and more like pure mana manipulation. Feigning shock, Jack quickly diverted the subject, shamelessly asking for a recovery potion. However, Ram's heart sank seeing the young master coughing up rivers of strawberry juice. Despite the internal damage, Jack stubbornly insisted he was fine, demanding the potion again. The butler pulled a flask from his coat, and Jack downed it in one breath. Ron scolded him, warning that without that potion, Jack would have already crossed the Styx. Even in that dire state, Jack grinned, praising the butler for always being prepared for such lethal emergencies. He knew Ron would prioritize his master's life. This unwavering trust stemmed from a tragic past. He recalled a lifetime where Ron was the only one by his side until the end. Half-conscious, Jack muttered about their shared history and the words left unsaid in his previous life. With glistening eyes, he whispered a sincere, "Thank you for everything." He lamented his past arrogance, realizing just how foolish he had been to stay silent. Witnessing this, Ron realized the young master's true secret was knowledge of the future itself. Jack finally confessed to his regression, a concept Ron understood all too well. Steeling himself, the boy prepared to stand up once more. He marveled at his rapid recovery, realizing Ron had given him an incredibly rare, high-grade potion. He retrieved his blade and coat, taking one last look at the broken blonde enemy. Stepping on the fool's head, Jack mused about turning this genius into his personal messenger. Ron noted that the young master had made a surprisingly wise choice. Jack scoffed, shifting back to the topic of regression, asking if Ron wasn't curious about his fate. He tried to find a hook to pique the butler's interest, but Ron remained stoic. He mentioned the Marcos family and his sister, but Ron had already anticipated their grim ends. Just by looking at Jack's eyes, Ron knew the past timeline had been a nightmare. Jack teased that he'd only share the details if the butler showed a bit more enthusiasm. He smirked, asking Ron what he truly thought about his secret knowledge. The servant's indifference annoyed Jack, who shouted at the man to stop being so dull. When asked of his own fate, Ron calmly assumed he would have survived any ordeal. The butler simply didn't believe he was the type to meet a premature end. Jack dropped a bombshell. That was exactly how Ron had died. Finally, the butler was shaken. But Jack told him not to dwell on the tragedies of a dead timeline. Retiring to the carriage for a rest, Jack left Ron to deal with the remaining survivors. Finding a lingering guard, Ron coldly ensured the man would never wake up again. He stared at the 25 elite knights, wondering if a mere sword could cause such devastation. Their hearts were pierced, yet the wounds didn't resemble anything made by a physical blade. The source of such lethal power remained a mystery to him. Surveying the corpses, Ron wondered what kind of hell Jack had endured in his past life. Jack bolted upright, drenched in a cold sweat as Ron's voice pulled him from a nightmare. Recognizing the butler, Jack finally let his guard down and spoke the truth. Admitting his pain, he accepted a bag from Ron containing looted potions and gold coins. Jack was stunned. Even these hunting dogs were carrying a small fortune in gold. As he sealed the pouch, Jack explained that more potions were useless now, handing 3 high-grade flasks back to Ron. "Consider this interest for the potion you gave me," the boy said firmly. Ron smiled, his single investment having just yielded a 3-fold return in divine medicine. Ron questioned the fate of the corpses, but Jack's heart remained indifferent. Leaving them for the crows, Ron warned that survival alone breeds suspicion. Jack's eyes narrowed in surprise. There was no doubt, the shadow of House Marbus loomed close. Yet Jack knew his father was powerless against his hidden strength. Ron insisted the Lord would demand an immediate audience for answers. Jack offered a wager, but Ron declined, knowing his master's genius. The loyal knight dropped to one knee before his master. He sensed a hidden conviction within Jack, who confirmed their secret meeting. To ensure perfection, the mage's illusion stood guard at the palace. The magical double was likely cleaning the annex at that moment. A 9th circle clone, undetectable to those currently lost in slumber. Shifting gears, Jack considered the Marcos family's inevitable shock today. If danger peaks, Ron must reveal Jack as the true culprit. Harm my sister, and the Marcos lineage will burn to ashes. A heavy silence descended between the master and his servant. Jack laughed at Ron's tension, dismissing his dark warning as hypothetical. He granted the Marquis one final chance to be a father. Academy bound, Ron questioned how the Lord would react to this. Jack remained unfazed. The Academy's laws were his ultimate shield. Once inside, only death could force a student back to the mansion. With that settled, it was time for the servant to take his leave. The longing in the butler's eyes was clear as day. He yearned to follow, but Jack bid him a safe journey. 4 years of separation, even Jack wasn't sure of Destiny's plan. Above all, his sister's safety remained Ron's most sacred duty. Alone at last, Jack began weaving a brand new scheme. A 4-day trek through mountain trails separated him from the academy. To his surprise, the rugged trail felt more like a road. Luggage in hand, he sensed a nearby village on the horizon. Jack struggled to mount the horse. His youthful body was annoying. They rode into a peaceful night, masking the carnage left behind. The academy wasn't his first stop. A different destiny awaited. Nav's loyalty belonged solely to the great master, Valentine Milos. She was his savior, gifting him the power for vengeance. The forgotten queen of forbidden magic, the very embodiment of terror. Riding forth, his heart thundered with a passion long forgotten. Entering Baron Arbelow's lands, Jack sought shelter at a local inn. Happy children played nearby, hinting at the town's peaceful atmosphere. Inside, a lively crowd and a friendly hound greeted him. Petting the dog, he prayed for a meal without unnecessary conflict. A voice rang out, surprised by such a young, solitary traveler. A spirited girl approached, offering him a warm meal and rest. Her rugged attire suggested she was a mercenary, not a maid. Jack offered 3 coins, requesting food and a strong drink. Securing a room, he entrusted his lethal blade to her care. She accepted only a single coin, insisting a growing boy needed hearty meat and apple pie. With a warm smile, she offered milk or ale. Flustered, Jack opted for the milk. She gestured for him to play with Arnold, the tavern dog, while the food cooked. The peaceful atmosphere felt surreal. The shadows of war hadn't darkened these lands just yet. Arnold was spirited, but Jack whispered a grim warning about the chaos destined to come. He longed for such simplicity, until sharp whispers from a nearby table caught his ear. They spoke of a massive purge, a plan to wipe out monsters using an army of mages. One drunk scoffed, mocking the Tulkun Empire for wasting resources on such a trivial threat. Jack's muscles tensed as the blond man voiced his bitter, dangerous dissent. The Marquis's power was absolute, a legendary force no one dared to challenge. The elite Iron Blood Knights were being deployed into the treacherous demon beast forest. By royal decree, Teslin's king summoned every noble's private guard and mercenary for war. This vast woodland sat at the base of the Grand Canyon, a supposedly neutral territory. But it was no paradise. It teemed with orcs, goblins, and far worse horrors. From emuji serpents to ancient elves, the forest provided rare materials for god-tier weaponry. Harpy feathers were mere trinkets, while enslaved elves became playthings for the highborn elite. This invasion wasn't about safety. It was driven by the bottomless pit of human greed. But Jack knew the truth. This grand expedition was marching straight into a massacre. The Iron Blood Knights would lose 1/3 of their men in a bloody, humiliating rout. That crushing defeat would shatter the king's reputation and turn the nobility against him. It was the spark for civil war. A patron shouted that the king was the real problem. His companions quickly silenced him. Treasonous talk in a public tavern was a death sentence. Bystanders stared in shock, praying the man was simply too drunk to realize his mistake. Jack watched closely, realizing this man didn't fear the crown's iron fist at all. Countless souls had been sent to the block for far less than insulting the royal bloodline. Suddenly, his own title rang out. They were mocking the 3rd young master of the Marquis. Rumors of Jack using forbidden magic surfaced, though they laughed it off, calling him a fool. Jack's eyes narrowed into a cold, lethal glare at those mocking his name. They were clueless. The blonde wondered how a loser could master arts lost to time. The woman cackled, joking that the Marquis's village idiot probably just tripped over his feet. The server returned with a tray, curious about the sudden burst of mocking laughter. Her voice broke his focus, and Jack realized a dark smirk had played across his lips. She slid into the seat beside him, begging for the gossip to cure her boredom. With a dismissive wave, the young genius politely declined her request. He joked that the Marquis's son was just an idiot, admitting he'd been eavesdropping. People love rumors, he noted, then asked how she chose to judge a person's character. She smiled, stating she only trusted her eyes, for rumors were nothing but hollow whispers. Sometimes, Jack countered, there is a lethal grain of truth hidden in those stories. She agreed as Jack bit into the pie. It lacked his butler's finesse, but tasted amazing. She shrugged, ending the debate by offering her own unique perspective on the matter. She teased that if the young master was this handsome, the rumors must be lies. Jack froze. He scrutinized her. The scar on her cheek and her hardened muscles spoke of a warrior's past. You're a branch manager of the guild, aren't you? Her embarrassed smile confirmed his sharp intuition. This wasn't a lucky guess. Jack's eyes were trained to spot hidden power instantly. In a city teeming with sellswords, only a true veteran could command such a rowdy room. Guilds near inns handled everything from territorial skirmishes to monster hunts. Jack teased that the woman surely possessed far too much free time. Managing both an adventurer's guild and an inn was no small feat. Business was slow in quiet Arbelow, so she needed every coin possible. Turns out, the inn was actually a front for the local adventurers' guild. Though labeled the Morris family's fool, his face wasn't exactly common knowledge. How did a remote branch manager recognize him before the truth surfaced? Reaching the village gates, the boy whispered to his horse, knowing civilization was finally close. 2 guards blocked his path, demanding his purpose and business there. Jack simply flashed his family crest, the ultimate pass for any noble. Recognizing the Marco name, the guards bowed deeply and cleared the way. Inside the dim bar, she laughed off his warnings about contacting soldiers without the Lord's consent. He smirked. At least the woman was being hospitable for now. She only knew him through lingering whispers and rumors. She introduced herself as Jane Errar, a name that sparked instant curiosity. Errar, the name of the very land they stood upon. The Lord's sister was a noble living the life of a mercenary. A noble doing commoner's work, she was truly an extraordinary woman. While most noblewomen faced arranged marriages, she chose the adventurer's path. Unlike Jack's family, her kin didn't view her as a commodity. A truly noble household was all he could manage to say. When asked why Amaro's heir lacked escorts, he called himself an idiot. Jane stood completely frozen. He was unexpectedly witty, far from the useless rumors she'd heard. Still, he needed a few capable hands for the long road ahead. He offered 5 gold coins for experienced veterans who could cook. Jane's eyes gleamed. Such a generous offer was unheard of here. 100 bronze coins equaled a single gold piece in this realm. She promised everything by dawn, asking if he'd pay for room and board. He handed over 3 gold, requesting a sturdy carriage and fast horses. He was a truly lavish client. Tossing him a key, she promised to recruit only the finest veterans. With such a sharp branch manager, the city felt surprisingly secure. Exhaustion claimed him the moment his body hit the soft bed. Suddenly, he was back in that dark cave, bound by heavy chains. He wept as a voice mocked his eternal, pathetic weakness. Kindness wasn't a sin, but incompetence was a death sentence. He whispered his desperate consent. His new master's touch felt real, until he awoke drenched in sweat. Just another nightmare, a ghost of the training he survived. Jane barged in without knocking, her voice shattering the morning silence. Arnold pounced on him, greeting the boy with enthusiastic, wet licks. He stumbled downstairs, suitcase in hand, still fighting off sleep. Jane remarked on his restful night. A premium carriage awaited his command. She introduced the seasoned veterans, his personal escort for the journey. Among them stood his former mockers, now silenced by sheer embarrassment. Their leader called himself John Doe. A name for the unidentified dead, a grim alias for a mercenary. The boy found it curious. Jack ignored the obvious deception. He shook the man's hand with a grin. A unique name indeed. The trek to the Rocky Mountains was long. "We camped twice," the captain explained. A grueling path lay ahead. His men were veterans and chefs, but Jack only cared for leisure. He demanded absolute comfort. The young master handed over his luggage. "Move out," he sighed. "I am already weary." With that, the escort departed. Their journey into the wild began. Jack called his guide entertaining. Jane simply nodded in agreement. He is a true veteran. That would be true if he were a common soldier. Ron was a 9th Circle master, but this Joe nobody, an 8th Circle power hiding for no reason. Jane asked if he wanted a veteran. Jack simply ignored the question. His gaze drifted away. "We shall meet again," the boy said. Jane promised a cold beer next time, a pact between two souls. He winked, demanding she pay for the round. Then he stepped out into the world. The tavern was behind him. She watched from within, smiling. A strange fondness for the little master bloomed. "Safe travels," she whispered. Jack rested inside his carriage. It was not a palace, but it served. A humble sanctuary on wheels. The sky was clear and bright. He felt stronger than the day before. Vitality surged through him. While manipulating mana, he felt eyes. Joe Nobody was watching him intently, studying the young master. Jack sat up, catching his eye. "Tell me," he began, "do you know who I am?" The man stammered about high nobility. Jack smirked and tilted his head. "Continue," he urged. The blonde said he was a world traveler. At least, that was the branch manager's story. A convenient cover. Jack asked about Jane's secrets. "Ask anything," the mercenary offered, trying to bridge the gap. Jack revealed his family's pocket watch. The crest shimmered in the light. "Recognize this mark." The man's face told the story. He knew the crest, yet not perfectly. A flickering realization. "The House of Valent," Jack explained, "led by the fool Marcus. A house on the brink." A heavy silence filled the air. The mercenaries grew stone cold, tension thick enough to cut. "Think back to the family idiot." Jack's voice was hauntingly calm. A predator in child's clothing. "The one recently behind bars." Joe trembled to his very soul. The truth hit like a blade. The pieces finally clicked together. Jack's explanation had been far too precise. The identity was revealed. Rumors of forbidden magic had spread. A dark legacy from his prison days. Whispers of ancient power. "Why so serious?" Jack laughed. "Where's your laughter from yesterday?" He mocked their fear. "I am sorry," the man choked out. He was not entirely wrong about the magic. Jack knew it well. His master was the absolute peak, a sovereign of forbidden sorcery, the true master of darkness. Even a swordsman must know magic. "But why use spells?" Jack asked, "when my fists are enough?" "Joe Nobody," he called out sharply. The man flinched as if struck. Panic flared in his eyes. Jack faked a wounded heart. "Why stay silent during their insults? Am I not your charge?" The group was left in total chaos. They could not grasp his intentions. A genius play of emotion. The leader stammered a poor excuse. "I was misinformed," he lied, desperate to save face. The manager had only briefed the captain. A secret kept from the rank and file. Shadows within shadows. "Forget the past," Jack declared. Joe accepted, his heart still racing. The tension remained. By the fire that night, they agreed rumors were just noise, empty words in the wind. Joe was stunned by the boy's nature. Unlike typical nobles who loathed dirt, Jack was different. He was even helping with the chores. A noble washing dishes. It was truly unheard of. I mean, a legend in the making. The feast was divine, leaving the main character satisfied despite the guilt of leaving Ron behind to suffer. Jack claimed these tales were his payment for the gourmet dinner they had shared together. Wondering about the night watch, he learned the mercenaries had simply drawn lots for their shifts. Jack teased them about joining, but the mercenaries joked that a growing boy needed his rest. He quipped back, asking if they would take responsibility for his height, then dropped the subject. To kill time, they traded stories. Jack led by asking about the true number of existing dragons. He knew such profound questions had likely never crossed their simple minds before. They recalled legends of a founding king who supposedly purged all dragons from existence centuries ago. It was a legendary tale, stripped of all its complex nuance. Julius Teslin supposedly slew every dragon, forging his empire across the vast western continent. Yet, glory faded as the empire shrank into a mere kingdom, serving the Tolkien Empire. That was the official history every child knew by heart. Jack corrected them, detailing lords in the Black Sea and a hatchling hidden in the palace. He added that 16 dragons roamed the lands, many disguised through the art of polymorph. Naturally, they scoffed. Dragons were myths, creatures of ink and parchment that no one had seen. The young master chuckled softly at their disbelief, explaining that ancient laws prevented dragons from ever truly mingling with the world of humanity. One man asked if the king had failed his mission, and Jack knew that was the truth. No dragons were slain. The king had merely sought a chance to negotiate with divinity. In reality, 2 nameless shadows had orchestrated the entire legendary conquest. Keeping those secrets, Jack listened as they asked what the remaining dragons were doing now. He revealed their world was limited. Beyond the Western Sea lay mysteries far greater than they imagined. Aside from the hatchling, the lords existed solely to guard the barrier of the Black Sea. Joe pressed for more details about the nature of this barrier. But even Jack only knew it was an ancient seal separating continents, protected by the dragon lords. Truthfully, even he was tempted by the secrets of the unknown eastern lands. His grand tales were met with roaring laughter, the mercenaries dismissing his truth as pure fantasy. The blonde man praised Jack's imagination, assuming he just wanted some entertainment for the long road. Jack just smiled. He never expected these men to grasp the reality of his words anyway. Rising from his seat, he paid no mind to their doubts and retreated toward the carriage. The mercenary asked if the young boy was turning in for the night. Jack nodded, wanting a soak and fresh linens, firmly declining an escort to handle things himself. Submerging into the warm water, the protagonist exhaled a long breath of pure relief. It was ironic. He spoke the absolute truth, yet they treated it as a child's story. Playing the silent hero was dull. He preferred being a bit more talkative. As he soaked, he pondered if Joe Nobody was actually a hidden spy from Tolkien. Between the branch manager and this strange man, the pieces of this puzzle were not fitting. He had requested simple guards from Jane to escort him on this journey. But finding an 8th Circle mana user hiding in plain sight was an unexpected variable. Only elite captains of the knights usually wielded such immense 8th Circle power. Why would a god-tier warrior lead a lowly mercenary squad? There was a deeper secret here. Shrugging off the worry, he closed his eyes and began circulating mana within the water. His soul speech fatigue was finally fading after days of resting in the carriage. With his strength returning, his only focus was reaching the destination where his master waited. With suspicion lingering over Joe Nobody, he resolved never to leave himself vulnerable. Direct confrontation was unavoidable. As he returned to the campfire, the mercenaries gaped at his lightning-fast bath. Gripping his blade, the boy claimed his irritation grew too intense to finish washing in peace. They asked what was wrong, but their ignorance only insulted him. "Are you truly this blind?" he sneered, leveling his steel at a member. He demanded Joe Nobody explain why a legendary 8th Circle mana master was slumming it as a mercenary. Jack's destination was sacred, and he refused to escort a man shrouded in such suspicious, deep-seated secrets. The blonde mercenary intervened, shouting in defense, "What kind of nonsense are you spouting?" Joe silenced his comrade, coldly questioning what the boy would actually do if he were truly that powerful. "You've entertained me," Jack countered. "Now it is your turn to tell a tale. Give me your truth." The man asked what the price of his silence would be. Edging his blade closer, Jack threatened to turn him into monster feed. "Or perhaps you're a Tolkien spy." His words made them tremble. He mentioned Jane's promise to share a beer, testing the man's reaction. Why trust Jane if he were a traitor? Suddenly, the leader's composure shattered, his face twisting in shock. He barked, demanding why the boy had dared mention her name. Our main character laughed, asking if he was curious whether her final meal would be that promised beer. Wearing a wicked grin, He remarked that this game of cat and mouse was becoming truly exquisite. Tension thickened the air. Despite Jack's provocations, the man's mana circles remained unnervingly still and silent. Caution or hesitation. Either way, fate had spared his life for now. Jack warned he couldn't pull his punches. He'd have decapitated him the instant that mana circle flickered. Life or death. He granted him 60 seconds, praying the veteran wouldn't choose a shallow grave. Back at the inn, Jane had whispered that Jack was an anomaly, far surpassing any local rumors. Sensing the vast mysteries behind his gaze, she had personally commissioned Joe Nobody for this escort task. After all, such a legendary child possessed the power to rewrite their entire destinies. Nobody could look at him and see a mere cast-off, but now all talk was finished. Joe felt like a trembling herbivore facing a primal lion. Every instinct screamed that this boy was lethal. Doubts swirled. How could a mere child perceive the hidden depths of an 8th Circle mana user? Had Jane betrayed his secret? Joe immediately cast that paranoid thought into the abyss. His trust in her was absolute. She would never breathe a word of his true identity. As the countdown hit 40 seconds, the mercenary finally broke his heavy, suffocating silence. He claimed no child could touch an 8th Circle master, yet that boy's ferocious gaze unsettled him. He stood his ground. The monster before him was clearly no ordinary human child. His companion trembled in terror, pleading for the truth, but Joe struggled to find the beginning. Feeling like prey about to be devoured, decades of mercenary life flashed before his panicked eyes. Relying on the luck that kept him alive, he chose to follow his gut instinct. Time expired. Jack prepared to strike, but the man's voice cut through the deadly air first. He inquired about Jane, desperate to know if the main character truly held all the cards. It was a cliché tale, a forbidden romance between a noble's daughter and a lowly commoner. They met when she was 19, while he wielded the power of the 7th Circle. Their instant spark blossomed into an eternal flame, a predictable yet profound bond of the heart. Personal demons kept them from the altar, though an 8th Circle master should possess immense worldly influence. A legend doing grunt work remained a baffling mystery. Jack suspected trouble, yet knowing Jane, her family likely prioritized something far more valuable than gold. Our hero questioned if Jane was truly just a lowly guild manager in some backwater territory. He is a mere mercenary. He pressed further, asking if Joe had only approached him for some selfish, hidden gain. The man confirms it, yet Jack hesitates. After all, a lie is easily crafted. Piercing Joe with a gaze, Jack questions the Empire's dragon secrets. The man deflects with mockery. Smiling, the boy reveals the truth. A master is one who carves 10 circles. Yet, a deeper abyss exists. Monsters there devour souls instead of mere mana. Behold, true transcendence. The revelation freezes the escort, though their leader remains eerily composed. Jack continues. In 2 years, 𝒏𝒄𝒏 shall be crowned the continent's peerless blade. He explains this knight will inherit the legacy of the forgotten, ancient transcendence. However, that tragic man never achieved such godhood through his own merit. Intrigued, the man listens as Jack speaks of bones replaced by dragon marrow. He became a hybrid monstrosity. The horror on Joe's face tells the story. Silence falls. The very notion of a human-dragon hybrid feels like pure insanity. The man scoffs, demanding relevance. Jack notes the Empire possesses only one dragon. Though nearly immortal, a single specimen limits the scope of their dark experiments. Thus, agents were deployed across borders. Their primary mission was simple espionage. Their true goal, to hunt for the existence of other living dragons. The leader erupts in laughter, dismissing the grand tale as mere high fantasy fiction. Jack senses their disbelief. Still, Joe's genuine shock proves he isn't a spy. Crossing his arms, he asks if the boy's lethal suspicion has finally cooled. Jack agrees, mockingly wishing him joy with the manager and a wedding invite. Suddenly, Jack's blade flashes behind him. Joe was caught drawing his steel first. Jack growls that mercy is only granted because he initially doubted the man. He pulls the mercenary close, his voice a venomous, low-frequency whisper. Last warning, if your bloodlust flares again, I will reduce you all to ash. The group quakes in terror, desperately pleading for both men to stand down. Jack's attempt at camaraderie fails. The chasm between master and servant is vast. Jack retreats to the carriage, leaving the shaken men to whisper in the dark. One wonders why a man with noble potential would live as a lowly mercenary. The leader's lie about being fourth circle still stings the blonde man's pride. Yet, years of shared blood and saved lives stay his tongue from harsh judgment. An eighth circle companion meant they were the most formidable force on the continent. He dreamed of becoming a mercenary king, but Joe knew that was impossible. To Joe, it was a farce. An eighth circle master would never settle there. 4 legendary masters ruled the underworld. He sighs, choosing silence over a futile argument. A recruit asks if the legends are true. The leader nods, his face grim. Though the blonde man calms them, he wonders why the captain stayed so still. Memories of the icy confrontation haunt the captain, drenching him in cold sweat. His hands tremble. The stench of death remains. He nearly broke under the pressure. As Jane warned, the boy was a fascinating, yet utterly lethal anomaly. The Empire's civil war had the continent bleeding, but this felt far worse. Spies and dragons. An ominous instinct screams at him to dig much deeper. Days pass. Jack offers another tale. The mercenaries stiffen, dreading his next words. He asks what they know of the great forest's monstrous, magical sovereign. They claim it is a 9th circle beast. Jack smirks. It is actually 10th. Shock ripples through them. Jack promises the truth will unfold from the ancient past. Jack's revelation sparks intense curiosity. He recounts a legend from 23 years ago, involving the forest lord and the harpy monarch. The mercenaries are stunned by his knowledge. Jack explains the eternal, blood-soaked rivalry between the orcs and the harpies. These two races wage endless war. Any seasoned mercenary knows they are the undisputed, apex predators of this ancient woodland. Their sheer power makes them guardians. Jack reveals an unthinkable secret. The Harpy Queen and Orc King once shared a forbidden, romantic bond. Peace reigned until Blackman rose as the Orc Lord. 5 years later, chaos erupted. Jack smiles as the men lean in, captivated. When their forbidden love was finally exposed, a violent uprising shattered the foundations of both their races. Jack notes that race is the only divide between humans, harpies, and orcs. Greed for power ignited a betrayal. Rebels used the forbidden romance as a pretext to exile their legendary leaders. The coup failed. The traitors were utterly annihilated. Joe asks why the hatred persists. Jack explains that Blackman and Vala ultimately chose to part ways forever. They sacrificed love for their people's prosperity. Their logical choice left a lasting legacy of bitter, generational resentment. The mercenary leader ponders the tale. He recalls a time when these races were far less formidable than today. Decades ago, they evolved rapidly, claiming their titles as the forest's dominant, unstoppable rulers. Jack explains the secret. Harpies mastered orc combat techniques, while orcs unlocked the harpies' sacred spiritual arts. This deadly exchange of knowledge only occurred because their leaders were torn apart by destiny. Jack suggests a survival tactic. If captured, Joe should use this ancient, hidden tale as leverage. It might delay his execution. Looking at the boy's innocent face, Joe decides to trust his strange wisdom. Changing the mood, Joe offers dried meat, which Jack accepts with a cheerful and hungry grin. Jane's cooking was superb. Meanwhile, dark clouds gather at the Marquis's distant and cold palace. The Marquis receives a devastating report regarding the brutal ambush on his 3rd young son's convoy. Near Arbelo, the entire escort was wiped out. Investigators detect traces of high-tier, sophisticated magic at the scene. The Lord seethes with rage. With the Iron Blood Knights absent, he suspects a deep conspiracy involving the king. He commands Gonzalez to uncover the truth. The man bows in silent, loyal obedience. The butler hesitates, noting Jack's body was never recovered. The boy might still be breathing somewhere. A living Jack is a goldmine of information. Gonzalez is granted absolute authority to hunt the boy down. Before the redhead departs, the Lord muses that his useless son might actually be something more. The informant leaves in silence, deeply troubled by the hidden truth of the bloody massacre. At Rocky Mountain's base the next morning, Jack presents a heavy sack of gold to Joe. Joe stares at the wealth, his hands trembling. He stammers that the reward is far too generous. Jack calmly takes 10 gold coins and some potions, leaving the small fortune for the loyal mercenaries. With a warm smile, the boy thanks them for the journey and offers a sincere, humble apology. He bids them farewell, but Joe stands frozen. Jack wonders why they aren't departing for home yet. Joe Nobody admits he is overstepping, but he begs for a small moment of the main character's time. With Jack's nod, Joe claims that the life of a mercenary isn't as grim as it seems. Confused by the sudden change in topic, Jack waits as the man tries to find his words. Joe has seen the tragic fate of abandoned noble sons. He knows how this story usually ends. A lone third young master is a target. Jack asks if the man is suggesting a life of steel. Joe grips Jack's shoulders, emphasizing that the mercenary path offers a freedom the boy currently lacks. By avoiding high-risk contracts, he could wander the world in comfort and complete peace. Jack glances at the others. Only Joe truly understands the terrifying, hidden power the boy possesses. During their confrontation, the boy could have ended Joe's life in a heartbeat without even trying. The veteran knew the truth. He laments losing such a monstrous talent, though he pretends to have forgotten the boy's display of power. In a world where steel meant survival, Joe had spent a lifetime concealing his own true strength. Shamed by the truth, he admits his failure, but Jack ignores it as if nothing was ever said. It was obvious this Joe Nobody was cut from a different cloth than the rest. The main character foretells a Western disaster, warning the mercenary to vanish before the storm hits in a few years. He explains that while it makes no sense now, the man will feel the truth when destiny calls. An overwhelming dread will consume him, signaling that he must flee for his very life. Handing over the gold, Jack warns him not to die for coins, as survival is the only true wealth. The man agrees, and Jack, pleased to be understood, offers a friendly, encouraging pat on his shoulder. With a final warning to stay safe, the boy turns away to face the dark forest alone. When Joe Nobody asks for his real name, Jack offers a knowing smile, sensing the man's intuition. He identifies simply as Jack, requesting to be known without any grand titles or noble family names. Seizing the moment, the boy asks the man's true name. After a pause, he reveals it, Dynastismo. The protagonist promises that if the threads of fate allow, their paths will surely cross once again. Resuming his journey, Jack accelerates across a massive bridge, using his mana to surge forward. He feels the destination nearing, pushing past giant monoliths through sheer physical will and endurance. Gasping for air, he slows down, eventually igniting a faint mana light to confirm his arrival at the cave. Only a massive stone barrier remains between him and the master he served in a past life. Finding this place before was a fluke, a result of his desperate flight from a miserable, suffocating existence. Jack uncorks a flask, dousing the wall before gripping his sword with newfound determination. He knew the final step required a bloody price, drawing the blade across his own hand as a sacrifice. Staring at the steel, the boy realizes this small ritual holds more significance than anyone could imagine. Before his regression at age 17, Jack was a coward, always running and hiding from his problems. Having lost his companion Ron, fleeing seemed like the only way to survive that dark, lonely era. Back then, he wept as he made the sacrifice, viewing the opening cave as a literal miracle. Now he stood in the same spot, but this time, the boy was no longer a victim of fate. Stepping through the threshold, he moves with absolute confidence, knowing every inch of this hidden sanctuary. He descends the dimly lit stairs, though a familiar sense of nervousness begins to creep into his heart. After more than a decade away, he reaches the bottom and falls to his knees at the sight. His master remains chained just as before, her eyes snapping open at the sound of his voice. Jack wondered if any living being could truly achieve immortality, or if eternal life was a fool's dream. From emperors to monsters, all must eventually bow to the unchanging law of death and decay. This truth applied even to her, despite living 400 years through a soul separation technique. However, an ancient magic still maintained a faint, ethereal connection between her soul and body. Yet even that legendary power was fading, and though they met at age 10 before, things were different now. In this life, he would have only 13 years left to spend with his beloved mentor. The shackled woman asks if he truly called her master, while Jack battles a wave of bittersweet nostalgia. She watches him with sharp curiosity, wondering if she can guess the identity of this mysterious young visitor. Adala asks if he thinks this is a game, her voice sharp with ancient authority. She demands to know his identity, warning that he won't get another chance to explain himself. Laughing, he notes her temper hasn't softened, confessing how much he missed her during his long absence. Amused by this disciple she doesn't know, she questions if he truly understands who she is. He could never forget her. Their shared time was more precious than gold, even if only he remembered. To the world, those memories were non-existent, but to him, they were his entire reality. He introduces himself as the hero who ended the age of glory and birthed the age of humans. He tells the great sorceress Valentine Milos that he is her disciple, returned from the distant future. Hating riddles, she demands to know the truth, baffled by his claim of coming from the future. The boy understood completely. Stories were merely reality distorted by the subjective lens of the narrator. Irritated, she mocks his flair for drama and demands how anyone could stay calm in such an absurd situation. Tension thickens the air. Amidst the silence, the boy searches for a response that has long been forgotten. Those were her words exactly. He had perfected the art of mimicking her every sharp-tongued retort. She teased that his silver tongue belonged on a stage, but his pride stung when he called her master. Her correction was instant. She claimed no disciples, proving her cold, stubborn nature remained unchanged by time. She was exactly as he remembered. Realizing words were futile, the boy rose with a gaze of iron determination. In a flash of steel, he leveled his blade directly at the woman bound in chains. He apologized for his boldness, but it was necessary. Looking at the blade, she realized Jack wielded soul aura. Though his actions were disrespectful, he stood ready to accept any divine retribution once his mission was complete. Trembling, she warned that shattering her bindings would bring the entire cavern crashing down upon them. Jack didn't flinch. He advanced toward the woman who had once trained the legendary hero, Julius Teslin. Julius had sworn a sacred oath to return for his mentor, yet he left her to rot in darkness. It took 50 long years for her to accept the bitter truth. That coward had simply abandoned her. Jack moved like lightning, obliterating the dragon bone chains that had held her captive for decades. Valentine screamed as she fell, but Jack caught her. "I am nothing like Julius," he declared. "I act." She choked back a lifetime of tears, but their reunion was cut short by the roar of collapsing stone. The ceiling shattered under the shockwave. "Hold on tight," Jack commanded as the world began to cave in. Earth was his to command. He channeled his focus, activating 4 ancient techniques in a single heartbeat. Wind, forest, fire, and mountain. Holding her close, he unleashed a mana blast that could level entire peaks. Witnessing such godlike power, the master could only whisper one question. "Who are you, truly?" Jack smiled through the dust. "I am your disciple. My age and origin mean nothing compared to that." She was stunned by his youthful mastery of soul energy. He teased about being a future student, promising 13 years together. She leaned in close, her eyes searching his for any hint of a lie or hidden agenda. Her guard finally lowered. In a soft, uncertain voice, she asked if he truly hailed from the future. Jack clarified it was a temporal regression. The conviction in his voice made the impossible seem like objective truth. Once he saw her belief, the weight of the battle took its toll, and he collapsed in exhaustion. The master warned him coldly that forced bonds and relationships are destined to end in failure. He countered instantly. Without his forceful intervention, their fates would never have been entwined in this life. Valentine admitted he was quite the silver-tongued debater, even while suffering from such immense physical pain. He chuckled weakly, asking where she thought he had inherited such a stubborn and defiant spirit from. He formally introduced himself as Jack, her future disciple, vowing to follow her guidance in this life too. 5 days later in Arsenal territory, Jack wondered why his master had remained cloaked in absolute silence. Was she still processing the truth of his arrival, or had she simply retreated into her own thoughts? She suspected a bloodline connection to House Tessin, but no child should possess such refined soul aura. She began lecturing on the essence of soul power, then paused, testing him to finish her sentence. Jack felt the pressure. One wrong answer, and he'd face the same harsh discipline from his previous life. He explained it was a rare peak of mana mastery. She agreed, but noted his soul energy was unnaturally vast. He smiled to himself. He yearned to reveal everything, but Valentine's lingering silence kept his secrets locked away. She noted his hands were stained with darker energy than her own, a revelation that even startled Jack. Then came the ultimate question. Why was a boy like him granted the miracle of time regression? For 5 days, he had guessed her thoughts, yet she only cared about the why behind his return. Dark visions flickered, memories of blood-soaked nights where he razed entire villages without a shred of mercy. Jack confessed he didn't know why he deserved such grace, pleading for her to soften her stern expression. He argued that since the regression wasn't his choice, some higher power must have a clear, ultimate purpose. If fate dictates it, our paths will cross again when the time is right. Otherwise, life goes on. This fleeting moment with her matters more than any dark mystery. Spoken like a true romantic, his master teased before questioning his next move. Jack sought a loyal ally. Trust was vital, especially after the fever that nearly claimed him. Despite downing 2 high-grade potions in secret, he had lingered at death's very door for days. He required a shield, a true extension of his will, but today a simple outing sufficed. A new blade was next, until a frantic girl collided with them, scattering her floral cargo. Desperate apologies tumbled from her lips as she scrambled to explain her frantic haste. Jack reassured her, his eyes narrowing. Could this clumsy girl be the subordinate he searched for? As she gathered the blooms, Jack dropped a bombshell, a sudden proposal of marriage. Shock painted her face. The world seemed to stop at his outrageous offer. He offered his entire fortune, but she refused, overwhelmed by such a staggering sum. 1 gold coin was enough, she insisted, matching the humble worth of her basket. The deal was struck. Jack paid the price, and the girl surrendered her entire harvest. With a frantic bow, she vanished, leaving Jack to watch her retreating shadow in silence. His master sensed it first, a child of the night. Jack nodded, the realization echoing within. His expression hardened as the weight of her words settled. He turned to his mentor, seeking truth. To a normal eye, she seemed ordinary. Valentine's confusion mirrored the mystery before them. The master believed Jack's boldness stemmed from recognizing the girl's hidden, monstrous bloodline. Jack saw raw potential, a spark capable of reaching the 10th circle, yet he missed the obvious. Despite his power, the young genius still had much to uncover about this world. Jack chuckled, eager for her wisdom. To her, he was the same man she once knew. A nagging sense of déjà vu haunted the master. That girl, she felt like a ghost. Visions of a golden-haired girl dancing in palace gardens surfaced. How had royalty fallen so low? Beyond the shopping trip, Jack knew his next objective was a key player in the coming war. Creatures of the night possessed a terrifying strength that rivaled the legendary might of dragons. Jack recalled the war 10 years ago, when vampires dared to flee the forest of magical beasts. Though their rebellion was ultimately crushed in blood. Fugitives escaped the chaos. This girl was a survivor's child, but Jack cared little for her lineage. The clerk's endless chatter about the blade's quality began to grate on his nerves. Silencing the noise, he demanded she wrap up the transaction immediately. His first pawn was selected, but his master questioned the wisdom of recruiting a nocturnal monster. The sins of the father do not belong to the child, Jack countered firmly. His master scoffed at his logic, but Jack only offered a confident, knowing smile. Centuries ago, a grand pact was forged between the kings of all races and the dragon lords. Non-humans were exiled to the magical forest, forbidden from ever treading upon human soil again. 400 years have passed. The kings who signed in blood are now nothing but dust. Though the pact faded, the dragons remained as jailers, their shadow looming over the forest. Living 2,000 years, these winged tyrants enforced the ancient promise through sheer oppression. In his past life, Jack had slaughtered them. He knew the only cure for dragons was extinction. Jack watched a merchant touch the vampire girl's head, his gaze sharpening as he signaled Valentine. Scarred fingers told a story of suffering. Jack whispered that this burden wasn't her fault. He grasped the dark reality of her plight all too well. Details aside, he stood firm in his loyalty as her one and only disciple. Follow your heart, she advised, but strictly forbade him from sharing his essence with the girl. This child deserves the finest feast, not the chains of these cruel restrictions. Warmth flushes her cheeks as Jack's kindness lingers. She carries the orc essence, bound by her family's grim decree. Her mother's warning was absolute. Never touch human nectar, especially the vintage provided by that uncle. A quiet wonder filled her mind. Would his shadow darken their doorstep this very day? Silence met her ears. She pressed toward the chamber, whispering a soft prayer that her mother rested. A frail voice greets her, warning of a stranger's presence, before her eyes finally lock onto Jack. Trembling, the juice splashes. At that moment, Valentine commands the hidden woman to reveal her true face. Eyes of pale sapphire are unveiled. A lifetime has passed, the sorceress murmurs as the woman recoils in horror. She demanded to know how a legend could rot away in such a pathetic, crumbling hole. This was no commoner. She was 𝑦𝒓𝒎𝒚, the legendary progenitor of the vampire race. Outside, the young blonde plays with the birds, while Jack keeps a razor-sharp watch on the tension inside. Vivian's voice quivers, questioning if the woman standing there is a cold-blooded vampire hunter. It was a bitter shock to Valentine that the progenitor failed to recognize her eternal rival. I am Valentine Milos. The name sent shivers through Vivian, recalling the one who sealed them in the forest. Though her voice shook with terror, she mustered every ounce of pride to face her ancient enemy. A violent cough shatters her defiance. Valentine realizes the curse has reduced a queen to a monthly human. She pulls no punches, demanding why a royal bloodline has sunk into such a miserable state of decay. Noting the long absence of crimson nectar, she demands the truth behind this starving, hollow existence. The vampire scoffs. Is the great sorceress actually offering her a drop of hollow pity? In the Age of Legends, the mage's power was a mountain that no soul dared to climb. No grudges remain. Without that exile, the tides of enraged humanity would have wiped them from history. The truth spills forth. 5 tyrants and 2 lords held the vampire realm in a suffocating grip. They vanished into the fog of war, fleeing the hellscape to protect her innocent, tiny daughter. She vividly recalls the dragon who spared them, granting a pathetic exile in this village out of mercy. That single word, pitiful, echoes like a thunderclap within Valentine's soaring mind. The price was simple: survive on the blood of beasts, and her daughter would be granted life. A humiliating fate for a royal. Outside, Charlotte grows restless, demanding to know when Jack will finally leave. Uncle is coming, she warns, and he has no mercy for those who intrude on our home. The main character, remains unfazed. This mysterious uncle was the very reason he had ventured here. The girl suspects he's a common thief targeting her wealthy kin, but Jack's pride is sharply offended. Waiting is a chore, he sighs, pressing her for any scrap of information on this enigmatic benefactor. The young blonde searches her mind, knowing only that the man possesses wealth beyond imagination. He provided their sanctuary and the beastly food they consumed every 3 days to survive. Before Jack could probe further, a booming voice shatters the air, announcing the uncle's arrival. A man with silver hair glares, his suspicion radiating like a physical weight against the young boy. Charlotte glows with excitement, completely oblivious to the lethal tension suddenly filling the atmosphere. Jack's eyes narrow in triumph. The famous uncle had finally stepped into the light of his trap. Beneath that noble facade, Jack saw the truth. There stood the dragon, perfectly disguised as he suspected. As the newcomer demands answers, his senses alert him to another powerful presence hiding within. Inside, Vivian cries out for her child. The air outside thickens with killing intent until a telepathic command hits. He sends a silent reply, acknowledging the arrival of their dangerous target. The master's voice rings in his head, ordering him to bring both the child and the man upstairs. The stranger sneers at Jack's whispering, but the boy simply opens the door, beckoning them toward their fate. Jack knows the truth. The predator has come to watch his toys break in their final hour. The man grins wickedly. Why the look of despair? Have you finally seen a ghost from your past? Jack steps back, granting the mother a final sanctuary for their last farewell. Charlotte begs her mother to drink, desperately seeking a miracle to save her life. Refusing gently, the woman thanks her daughter for the precious, final birthday gift. The young girl's heart spirals in confusion, while the silent witnesses watch the tragedy. What began as coincidence had transformed into a somber vigil for a flickering soul. "Are you Vivian?" Jack asks, shattering the silence to claim his new responsibility. As the mother wavers, the boy decides to simplify her impossible choice. He shocks them all, offering a path: vampire queen or supreme progenitor ruler. Or vengeance against dragons. His daring proposal earns a dragon's ironic, cold smirk. Vivian whispers for Jack to come closer, wishing only for her daughter's enduring happiness. Nothing else remains. Hearing the name Jack Valent, she smiles faintly, entrusting her child to him. Jack vows to protect the golden-haired girl, taking full responsibility for her future. With one final declaration of love, Vivian dissolves into light before her daughter's eyes. Charlotte screams in agony, reaching for the fading stardust of her mother's soul. Jack and Valentine watch the heartbreaking scene in solemn silence. Suddenly, the fraudulent uncle erupts in twisted laughter, mocking Jack's vow of protection. He insults the starving vampires until Jack's mana-infused punch of rage strikes him. The impact hurls him back, yet he merely scoffs at the boy's insolent rudeness. As threats spill forth, Valentine intervenes, demanding the dragon's true name with authority. He stares in bewilderment, wondering how a mere puppet can speak with such consciousness. Ignoring his shock, she mentions the 5 missing dragons who should be guarding this forest. "You are just a hatchling. Were you even born in that ancient, legendary era? How could a doll know such secrets? Who are you, freak?" he roars. Hearing his master insulted, a cold, murderous hatred consumes Jack's every single thought. Valentine stands tall, revealing her true identity as the legendary ancient mage, Valentine Milos. Impossible. He denies the necromancer's return, accusing her of lying shamelessly about her hidden identity. She utters the forbidden names, Bahamut and Valort, secrets known only to dragon lords. The truth shatters his arrogance. He is stunned that the living legend still breathes. Finally, he introduces himself as the proud fire dragon of legend, 𝑨𝒓𝒎𝒚. He sneers, admitting his only goal was discarding his plaything's unwanted, half-breed offspring. Valentine's voice rings out with power, commanding the beast to step back immediately. He mocks her, citing the ancient pact where superior dragons showed mercy to humans. How dare a mere human command a sovereign dragon like him to retreat? Valentine retorts, he is mistaken, for that legendary mercy was always hers, not theirs. She exposes their ancient pride, revealing dragons were never merciful, only segregated and arrogant. She is disappointed that even after the Great War, their bloated egos remain unchanged. The dragon laughs at the lecture, calling her a mere phantom of an irrelevant past. Furious, Jack interrupts, calling the beast a disgusting lizard and ending his polite facade. He questions how a four-legged beast dares mimic human arrogance before his divine master. The insult enrages the dragon, his lethal claws bearing to tear Jack into pieces. Unafraid, Jack strikes with a devastating kick, slamming the dragon through the stone wall. Pinning the beast's chin, Jack warns him to show Valentine the respect she's earned. Spitting blood, the dragon curses the boy, stunned that an inferior human overpowered him. Done with the chatter, Jack commands him to yield before his patience finally snaps. Snarling, the dragon hurls Jack skyward, mocking his arrogance just because Valentine Milos backs his pathetic existence. Charlotte weeps as Jack sighs, picturing Ron's horror at seeing his young master covered in such filth. Your uncle is beyond redemption, Jack declares, shattering the girl's illusions about her blood kin forever. Tears flood her eyes as the agonizing truth of her reality finally sinks in. Grabbing her hand, Jack points at Galactes, exposing the beast who slaughtered her kin and desecrated her mother's dignity. Despite Trelot's protests, Jack demands only her permission to erase this entire bloodline from existence. Now, the entire world hung on the golden-haired girl's fateful decision. Witness the strength of your protector, Jack roars, lunging forward with cold, gleaming steel. Yet the vampire dances through the strikes with supernatural speed. Metal clashes, but Jack's blade fails to draw blood. Smirking, the fiend mocks Jack's meager mana, sneering that his grand boasts were nothing but hot air. Mid-insult, his hair drifts to the earth, severed by a strike faster than the eye could follow. Jack grins, claiming those locks were an eyesore. Now the real battle finally begins. Stunned, Valactes erupts in a foul torrent of venomous curses and rage. Enraged, he unleashes a gale force strike, but Jack stands his ground, defying everyone's expectations. Even Valentine's eyes widen as Jack nullifies dragon magic. Within moments, the vampire is pinned by Jack's crushing boot. Recognition strikes. This worm is 𝒏𝒂𝒏, spawn of the beast forest's infamous ruler, 𝑧𝒓𝒏𝒂𝒏. Blood drains from the vampire's face. How could this human know his father's name? Luca was one of the 5 great dragons, ruling the untamed wilds. Memories of a decapitated dragon from Jack's previous life surge, though this specific beast is new to him. This runt must have been hiding in the shadows, or died young in his original timeline. Jack mocks his behavior, triggering a feral growl. I am the sole disciple of Valentine Milos, Jack declares proudly. Broken, the dragon stammers, unable to grasp how a mere human shattered his absolute soul's speech magic. Truly a pathetic sight. This strongest life form looked like a worm. Jack levels his blade, giving the coward 5 seconds to apologize. Despite his face being crushed, Valactes snarls a defiance. Jack coldly vows to grind him into unrecognizable dust, just as he had done before. The air thickens with dread as the countdown begins, the world holding its breath. Wings snap open. At the final tick, Valactes chooses cowardice, soaring into the safety of the sky. He needed to flee back to the forest and warn the other dragon lords. Jack scowls, forced to expend more mana. He invokes the soul sword's true form, igniting a cataclysmic mana storm. The fleeing dragon's confidence shatters instantly. Behold the first technique of the 4 realms, the celestial sky. Valactes gapes at the sky, finally realizing he faced a monster. Trapped in a monochrome void, there was no escape. In his terror, a colossal Jack loomed over him. The dragon shrieked, begging for mercy. Jack jolts awake, gasping in a lavish, unfamiliar bedroom drenched in luxury. As he scans the room, Ron bursts through the door, eyes wide with relief. The butler bombards him with frantic checks, testing his vision and memory in a panicked blur. Enough with the questions. Jack groans, demanding a status report on the current situation. Jack asks after his companions. Ron confirms that Charlotte is safely resting in the adjacent chamber. Despite the mystery of the battle, the poor girl was utterly exhausted. Ron points to the green-haired woman on the sofa. Seeing Valentine, Jack offers a weary but warm morning greeting. Her correction is instant. "It's afternoon," she snaps. Ron trembles, stunned she can speak, wondering if he's invoked her wrath. She replies icily that his body is his to ruin. Jack chuckles, teasingly noting her obvious concern. Ron's eyes widen, questioning how a silent doll spoke after 3 days of stillness. Jack dismisses it. Valentine's dignity is the only priority in this moment. Ron bows, silencing his confusion to honor his master's absolute authority. The butler recounts the chaotic storm that erupted during Jack's long slumber. The escort's corpses were found in the mountains, alerting the Marquis to the slaughter. Knights began hunting Jack, fueled by sightings of him near Arbelo. They traced his path to Assen, where a dragon battle scorched the skies. They found our hero broken, rushing his dying body to the holy temple. Ron discovers the boy drained 3 high-level potions entirely alone. "It tasted like strawberry," Jack chuckles, amused by his favorite flavor. Jack demands to know why Ron isn't protecting Elizabeth as promised. The butler admits Elizabeth was forbidden from coming by the Marquis. Instead, an elite squad arrived under the Marquis, direct command, shocking Jack. His father's stupidity is legendary. Suddenly, a bold informant crashes the room. "State your business," Jack growls, catching the spy off guard with his awakening. Gonzalez reveals himself as the Iron Blood Knight's vice captain. He sneers, mocking Jack for bringing a commoner into the Marquis household. The knight insults Jack's weakness, demanding he act with noble dignity. Silencing his defenders, Jack commands the room to let the arrogant man speak. Gonzalez interrogates him about the 3 high-level potions purchased for the master. He claims the body could only survive 3 doses. Jack's coldness rattles the spy, who remembers a boy too terrified to look up. The redhead demands to know how Jack became the massacre's sole survivor. Jack dismisses it, calling the entire ordeal nothing special. He mentions the bone-breaking orders, stopping as he sees the spy's genuine terror. "Things got wild," he smirks, recalling the brutal plans of the lead knight. Mentioning Rizison, Jack remembers their threats to shatter his mana circle. With chilling honesty, the boy admits he slaughtered them all. Jack repeats his confession, his eyes devoid of any remorse. The truth hits Gonzalez. The culprit wasn't an outsider, it was Jack himself. "I never let enemies live," Jack declares, his gaze sharper than any blade. Gonzalez snaps, insulting Jack and shoving Ron aside, triggering the boy's wrath. No hesitation. Jack's fist explodes into the redhead's face. His patience had finally reached its limit. Dizziness strikes as Jack collapses, having just neutralized a 7th Circle knight. He asks if Ron is tired of his weak servant act. Jack urges him to stop hiding, admitting he once sought that easy path. But destiny demands more. A loyal servant deserves to live as a human. Ron's face radiates joy, finally embracing the taste of freedom. Jack asks how long it takes to cook this arrogant redhead. Ron laughs, claiming 5 minutes is far too long for his skills. Ron ruthlessly suppresses Gonzalez, ignoring the man's pathetic, desperate insults. The spy's counterattack fails against the overwhelming power of Ron's 9th Circle. Outside, guards tremble, wondering how a servant possesses such monstrous strength. Jack watches with cold eyes, recognizing legendary movements from a past life. Ron's foundations were purely magical, defying his average build. Even a 7th Circle knight like Gonzalez was utterly crushed in close quarters. Even a legendary spy from the Empire would find it impossible to survive a clash with this butler. Driven to madness, the informant lunges for a guard's blade, desperate to strike down his foe. Before the blade even moves, Ron's knee shatters the man's nose, a soul-crushing and absolute humiliation. Our protagonist watched with deep satisfaction. After years of silent endurance, his servant was finally unleashing his teeth. Ron turns instantly at his master's voice. Why is it taking so long to prepare a single ingredient? Jack smirked. Gonzalez tried a desperate, powered-up charge, but Ron was a blur, delivering a final, bone-breaking blow. You need more training, Jack mocked, while the guards were berated for their useless, cowardly hesitation. With the area cleared, the boy grabbed the redhead's hair. It was time for a little heart-to-heart. He pitched a cold deal. A man of his caliber shouldn't be rotting in the dirt when he could soar. Gonzalez tried to bite back, but Jack yanked his head. Do you finally understand your pathetic situation? The offer was simple. Stay as vice captain and receive the key to finally evolving your stagnant mana. A 30-year-old knight was too valuable to waste. Don't you want to reach the legendary 8th circle? Pure temptation flickered in the knight's eyes. Jack whispered that this pact would remain a complete secret. Watching from the shadows, Ron felt suspicion toward the master's intent, yet overwhelming pride at his growth. The tense moment was broken by Valentine, who tapped the servant's shoulder to draw his focus away. He moved to introduce himself formally, but she cut him off. You carry the Sword family's legacy. The revelation stunned him. Valentine deduced he had mastered the 9th circle decades ago, a legendary hidden rank. The 10th circle was within your reach, she noted, hinting at his lost potential as a grandmaster. Ron stood dazed, unable to comprehend her cryptic words regarding the absolute mastery of soul control. It had been 19 years since he abandoned his mana, only drawing it now to protect young Jack. There was no shame in his heart. He didn't serve out of duty, but by his own free will. Valentine couldn't fathom why such talent would serve a child, but the answer was staring her in the face. This boy was someone a legend of the Sword family would gladly die to protect at any cost. She asked if he knew the child's true nature, but Ron remained loyal to the story Jack shared. Ron chuckled, imagining Jack's confused reaction if he heard all this talk about the legendary Sword family. Shifting his cold gaze back to the fallen redhead, the main character threatened to end him right there, but offered the vice captaincy one final time. You're tired of losing, aren't you? Jack observed the man's desperate, trembling hesitation with a knowing smile. Stay still, Jack warned, pinning him down. With surgical focus, he targeted the 7 mana circles near the heart. He hoped the man would eventually appreciate the agonizing gift he was about to forcefully receive. As Gonzalez struggled, the boy held him firm. If I wanted you dead, you'd be cold by now. Raw mana surged into the circles, forcefully restructuring them in a symphony of soul-shattering agony. Eyes wide with shock, Gonzalez felt it. He was now an 8th circle knight. The power was intoxicating. The informant was paralyzed. The boy had just achieved the impossible, a forced evolution of mana circles. Obey me or suffer, Jack smiled, letting the rumors of his forbidden magic do the talking. He remembered the lies his father spread after the incident with Phelan to hide his true power. To Gonzalez, those lies were now an absolute, terrifying reality. This boy wielded the forbidden arts. Kneel, he commanded. I'm going to etch these orders into your very bones if I have to. Gonzalez was to return to the Marcus estate and play the fool, claiming the master knew nothing. His mission: eliminate 40 problematic Marcus members in 90 days. The knight realized he was trapped. Jack had planted a seed in his heart, not a gift, but a lifelong sentence of absolute servitude. Don't be scared, the main character whispered. If you obey, you'll gain benefits beyond your wildest dreams. He promised the agony would be worth it. The 8th circle's power was a drug no man could resist. Jack laughed at the knight's twisted fate. He knew the man would eventually beg for more power. Jack recalls the humiliation Gonzalez forced upon Ron during their travels, but the tables have turned. Now, the redhead is merely the butler's new slave. With a shattered pride and a lowered head, the man mutters his submissive obedience. The pact is sealed. Jack ruthlessly tosses Gonzalez aside, reveling in the acquisition of a new pawn. He prays this second subordinate proves more loyal than the last. Turning to Ron, he confirms the meeting with Valentine is complete. Famished, the main character demands a feast, but his ragged attire draws a concerned stare. Ever the meticulous mage, Ron had already prepared a pristine garment for his young master. Their departure is suddenly halted by Charlotte. She throws herself into his arms, her voice quivering with raw worry. "I feared you were gone forever," she whispers. Moved, Jack embraces her and orders a banquet fit for a vampire princess. He marvels at the blonde girl's innate power, despite her never tasting true essence. Beneath a blood-orange sunset, Jack offers a sincere apology for the ruin of her dwelling. But Charlotte softly explains that without her mother, any building is just an empty shell. Jack offers a gentle embrace, sharing the pain of losing his own mother long ago. Charlotte is amazed he found light with his mentor. Manipulating mana, he offers the starving vampire a taste of a legendary essence. The moment she drinks, a surge of ancient power erupts within her. The vampire bloodline finally awakens. These night dwellers rival dragons because they regenerate instantly with potent, life-giving blood. Despite the confusion, Charlotte beams with a joy she has never felt before. Jack questions her resolve, promising to unveil his true strength to prove his worth as her protector. With innocent wonder, she admits her fear but calls the experience thrilling, addressing him with pure admiration. Jack insists on the title of boss, and her joyful laughter echoes as she accepts her new role. Inside the manor, Ron is stunned to learn Jack slew an adult dragon. Even young dragons are 5-circle masters of destruction. Their dragonoid transformation compresses a mountain of power into a human frame, perfecting them for murder. While their true forms dominate with magic, this human shape maximizes their lethality in close quarters. If that arrogant 𝒏𝒈𝒄𝒏 hadn't been so slow, even I would have faced a true nightmare. Ron dutifully nags the main character to eat his greens, reminding him that his young body still needs growth. Jack dismisses the concern, returning to the topic and labeling the dragon a pathetic amateur whelp. A mere second-circle human had wrought such devastation. Jack realizes just how twisted their reality has become. Slaying a dragon is a feat beyond myth. The fire ant mercenaries would perish from disbelief if they knew. The butler flushes with embarrassment as he realizes the young master has seen through his web of secrets. Jack points out his mentor's own slip of the tongue, proving he had already pieced the puzzle together. Ron muses that some shadows must remain hidden from his master's sight forever. Despite his calculating nature in past lives, Jack was never one to dwell on the long-winded tales of history. Even during their desperate escape from the Marquest household, the butler's deepest truths remained locked away. Every soul carries a burden of secrets, but Jack needed to verify one final, chilling doubt. Staring deep into the butler's soul, he questions his ties to the Tolkien Empire. Ron's bewilderment is unmistakably genuine. A massive weight lifts from Jack's heart. This single doubt had haunted his every waking moment. He offers a serene smile, determined not to weigh down his most loyal ally with his own fears. Fatigue from the clash takes hold, but he must forge a new mana circle. Soul energy demands a vessel of iron. Valentine suddenly breaks his concentration, her presence cutting through the silence. She is stunned he utilized the dark bond, a forbidden spell known only to its creator and her pupil. This wartime pact binds one's very existence. Breaking it would shatter not just their mana, but their very soul. She questions his motive for branding Gonzalez. Jack reveals he carved an unbreakable oath to shield his loved ones. Tears well in Ron's eyes as he realizes the depths of the young master's devotion to his safety. The moment is broken by a weeping Charlotte, who has been mercilessly pampered by the overzealous maids. Jack extends a dinner invitation, but the girl shyly declines, overwhelmed by such abundance. Turning to his butler, he inquires if the vampire girl could join their ranks at the prestigious academy. Ron wavers, fearing a mere servant lacks the power to orchestrate such a grand scheme. Jack counters, praising his loyalty. Seeing Ron still unmoved, the boy sighs, threatening to handle the burden solo. The veteran servant scolds him for resorting to blackmail, but Jack scoffs, claiming he is no lowly criminal. Charlotte's eyes shimmer with hope upon hearing of the academy. An impossible dream becomes reality. Jack insists she attend. Such monstrous talent cannot be left to rot in isolation. Though only 11, bypassing the age limit of 14 is simple. A recommendation from Gonzalez will open those gates. He offers a reassuring smile. Everything is under his absolute control. Days later, they reach the gates. Ron hands over the luggage, his voice thick with concern as he bids farewell. "Send word if you need anything," he urges, his protective instinct flaring even as they part ways. Jack makes one final request: entrust the entire Marcus family affair solely to Ron's capable hands. The young master needed absolute silence to focus on his growth, free from any petty outside interference. Ron bows in obedience. Jack sneers, finding the red-headed Gonzalez far more foolish than he initially anticipated. To the protagonist, the man is nothing but a sacrificial pawn to be used and discarded. Jack reveals he has already planted a specific command, one that would require Ron's unique assistance to execute. The objective: sever their limbs, not literally, of course, but destroying the very foundations of their power. His true prey: the corrupt officials of House Marcus and the entire lineage of Count Mantis. A ruthless, surgical execution of revenge. Pure-hearted Elizabeth would suffer most. Jack sought to protect her innocence, yet knew the house's ruin was the necessary catalyst. "Guard her well," he commands, his voice a chilling blend of genuine protection and cold calculation. Ron swells with pride. "You have changed, master," he observes. Jack doesn't deny it. The past is dead. Entering the prestigious academy. The doll muses that while a beast dwells within him, he might still be a decent soul. Jack smirks, returning the compliment. He calls her good too, despite that prickly, stubborn nature of hers. She scoffs at his words, dismissing his praise as hollow chatter while maintaining her icy composure. Gazing at the towering spires, Charlotte gasps in awe. It is her very first time seeing such grandeur. "Take it all in," Jack whispers. "This is your new home." Her face lights up with pure joy. A staff member approaches, inquiring of his noble lineage. Instinctively, Charlotte clings to him, while Jack eyes the newcomer's intentions. With a sense of urgency, the official reveals that the headmaster is demanding an immediate audience in his chambers. "You are a legend here," the man notes, referencing the boy's infamous and blood-soaked history. Tales of the blood-stained noble son, found amidst the ruins, still haunt these hallowed halls. Though years have passed, the chilling whispers of his past still echo. Former Duke Rammel Einhard 𝒂𝒏 had preserved this office perfectly, a frozen monument to Jack's previous life. Memories flood back. He recalls this very room and a pivotal discussion regarding a life-altering examination. Back then, he had grumbled about the simplicity of the task, annoyed by the lectures he would be forced to skip. The headmaster chuckled, promising that as long as his rank remained supreme, expulsion was an impossibility. Jack's gaze darkened with betrayal, knowing his own blood, his father and brother, were actively plotting his demise. Assassination was certain before his coming of age. It was a grim reality that even the headmaster could not deny. Having witnessed countless noble tragedies, the old man could only offer a secluded room as a meager sanctuary. Shaking with fear, the young boy grappled with the crushing weight of total isolation and familial treachery. With a gentle pat on the head, the elder declared that his destiny now lay solely in his hands. In this life, Jack wears a predatory smile. He proposes a daring wager, catching the headmaster completely off guard. "I owe a debt from a lifetime ago," he explains, "and today I intend to settle the score." His price was a singular favor, a move on the chessboard that would rewrite the future of the world. 𝒓𝒚 marveled at the transformation. The broken, bloodied child who could barely whisper had become a formidable force. A mere month for the world, but 20 years of tempered soul for Jack, enough time to change everything. Intrigued by the gamble, the elder questions how the boy could possibly defy destiny. Tesla's fall was imminent. Bravery meant nothing against 30 Tolkien masters, monstrous hybrids infused with dragon bone and blood. Even worse, Tolkien boasted 1,000 high circle mages, while Tesla possessed a mere 2 masters and a handful of elite warriors. Against such overwhelming odds, 1 month was generous. As a Tolkien commander, Jack could end this in 3 days. Tesla's only shield was Headmaster 𝒓𝒚 and his 700 battle mages, elite soldiers forged by his own hand. Without the looming shadow of betrayal from his inner circle, the kingdom might have bought 2 more months. When the traitor's name is uttered, 𝒓𝒚 explodes in rage at Jack's disrespect, yet the boy's gaze remains chillingly steady. He coldly identifies Brutus Marcos, a 6th Circle Knight and Vice Instructor, as a high-level spy for the Tolkien Empire. 𝒓𝒚 scoffs, dismissing the claim as mere slander while warning Jack that his insolence will have consequences. Jack merely grins. When his blade pierces your back, you'll realize my warning was your only salvation. This taunt pushes the old master to his absolute limit. Fuming, the headmaster warns him of the weight of such accusations, choosing to bury this conversation forever. He dismisses the boy, revealing a crested pocket watch while swearing this secret dies within these walls. Jack demands the immediate summons of Brutus. To the headmaster's shock, he finds himself obeying. Inside the chamber, the unsuspecting traitor stands before them. He masks his deceit with empty praise, but Jack cuts him deep, announcing his imperial reports are finished. The spy falters, feigning confusion. Jack scoffs, calling him both deaf and dim-witted for dragging out the inevitable. His cover finally blown. Brutus plays the victim, claiming Jack is mentally unstable and warning that these lies will cost him dearly. Jack has no patience for games. Before the spy finishes, the boy hurls the watch, silencing the traitor's lies. Shock paralyses the instructor, while the young genius stands cold, watching the rat struggle within his trap. Bernardo begs for clarity, but Jack strikes first, his hand a blur as he pierces the man's defenses. The instructor lunges back in a desperate fury, shouting at the audacity of this young monster. Jack dances through the counterattack, his supernatural agility leaving the veteran knight utterly bewildered. He senses the 6 circle mana barrier, but to Jack, every perfect defense has a fatal flaw. With a thunderous impact, he buries 2 fists into the spy's gut, sending him crashing backward. The headmaster watches in awe as Jack stands over his prey, ready to break his will. The elite knight is now a broken mess on the floor, his pride shattered along with his ribs. "Confess now," Jack commands. "Cooperation is your only path if you wish to see tomorrow's sunrise." Brutus clings to his facade, but his pathetic acting only invites Jack's murderous smirk. Jack places a hand on the man's chest, hunting for the core of his power. Mana circles are intricate masterpieces, and Jack knows exactly how to make their destruction agonizing. Pinning the traitor down. "Speak the truth," Jack whispers, "or I'll shatter your circles until you're nothing but a cripple." Fear flickers in the man's eyes, yet he desperately tries to maintain his crumbling composure. The interrogation begins. "Are you a Tolkien rat?" The instructor trembles, but the lie leaves his lips. With a sickening crack, Jack shatters the first circle, stripping the master of his hard-earned power. The question repeats. Jack isn't rushed. He enjoys watching the truth bleed out of his victim. Now truly terrified, the spy gasps for air, feeling like a condemned man on the gallows. Jack's voice is a lethal whisper. Regeneration will be a slow, agonizing hell that makes death look merciful. He promises to sever the mana veins permanently, ensuring the traitor never tastes power again. "I can make this pain eternal," the young master muses, savoring the spy's absolute despair. Behind that cold smile lies a predator who has already claimed his prize. The dragon essence surging through his veins, fused with his ancient wisdom, could rewrite reality, leaving the instructor paralyzed in sheer, trembling terror. He stammered, demanding how a boy knew such dark truths, as the reality of Jack's insight chilled his very soul. The taboo human trials had begun. A stuttering Brutus hissed, demanding to know who leaked the Empire's darkest secrets. Coldly, Jack exposed the dragon's sin, mocking the Sixth Circle mage for stooping to such wretched, forbidden depths. The instructor roared in confusion, desperate to know how a child grasped the Tulkun Empire's most classified research. That panicked reaction earned a wicked smirk from the boy, who instantly began shattering every mana circle at once. He sneered at the fallen man. By the end, Brutus was a hollow shell, stripped of every ounce of power. With the trash cleared, Jack faced the headmaster, signaling it was finally time for their true negotiation. Yet the old man remained stunned, his mind struggling to process the impossible events. Even crushed, Brutus croaked that the Empire's wrath would follow, vowing they would tear the boy limb from limb. A stinging slap cut him short, silencing the pathetic instructor's desperate threats once and for all. Cornered, 𝒓𝒚 groaned at the looming scandal, yet he couldn't deny Jack's mystery. This wasn't the boy he met 1 month ago. Truly, he had become a different person. Jack demanded the matter be buried. The headmaster agreed to drop the details, but one burning question remained. How did he uncover it? He thirsted for the truth about the dragon blood, but Jack cut him off, invoking their ironclad agreement. The headmaster knew the continent's pulse. The dark omens of an inevitable war were already surfacing everywhere. Power struggles within the association flared as the moderate second son clashed openly against the radical crown prince's faction. Ultimately, the radicals seized control, and an empire fueled by extremism threw their weight behind the victors. Despite years of mountain isolation with his master, Jack possessed enough foresight to piece together the coming storm. He spared Brutus, tossing him to the headmaster. A man privy to dragon secrets was far too valuable to simply kill. Such intel was a priceless weapon for all. Even the king, leaving 𝒓𝒚 baffled by a boy who spoke of royalty with such casual authority. 𝒓𝒚 marveled, wondering how a broken Sixth Circle nobody on the floor could hold such world-shaking knowledge. Jack revealed that in his previous life, he saw the dragon hybrid experiments evolve far beyond mere animal subjects. Human trials were imminent. He'd unearthed documents so classified that even the Empire's highest elites were kept in the dark. But that burden now belonged to 𝒓𝒚. Offended by the old man's insults, Jack demanded 2 specific compensations. Knowing the headmaster's vast wealth, his first demand was a private estate near the academy, complete with a garden. 𝒓𝒚 protested dormitory regulations, but Jack threw his own teachings back at him. Every rule bows to an exception. Exhausted, 𝒓𝒚 sighed, bracing himself for the second request, which was simple: enroll Charlotte immediately, regardless of it being the middle of the 2nd semester. Though admissions only opened yearly, the protagonist once again played his favorite card, the power of the exception. 𝒓𝒚 gestured to the pale blonde outside, where Charlotte was currently squeezing Valentine like a helpless plush doll. Intrigued, 𝒓𝒚 questioned their bond. Jack's claim of being her guardian drew a dry chuckle. Stepping out, Charlotte greeted him with pure joy. "Did you wait long?" he asked gently. But she ignored him, desperate to know her fate. Jack's confirming smile was the sweetest melody she'd ever heard. Her joy flickered momentarily before a shadow of doubt clouded her expression, as if a heavy weight remained. Jack noticed, asking what was wrong. She whispered hesitantly, never daring to dream that such a future was possible. This sanctuary was meant only for the chosen humans, and she knew all too well she was anything but human. Yet Jack dismissed her fears, asking if she truly despised her nature, or if she yearned for a mundane human life. The question deepened the sorrow in her eyes, as she drifted into a sea of melancholy reflections. She hailed from the tragic House Royale, a vampire dynasty that had desperately clung to its crumbling throne for centuries. But in a flash, her entire lineage was slaughtered. Her father fell in the bloodbath, and her mother, her last sanctuary, well, she knew that tragedy all too well. Jack sighs, urging her to embrace her true self. Bloodline is trivial. Whether human or vampire, she must stand tall. You are Charlotte the Royal. Never let the weight of your promises fade from your heart. Reaffirming his vow, he swears to be her eternal shield. Should she seek the throne, he will pave her path. If her heart desires to revive her kin, he will crush every obstacle in their way. Nothing is impossible. He forbids her from self-loathing, and Muth offers her deepest, silent gratitude. She recalls her mother's chilling words. Nothing is free. Jack nods, acknowledging that harsh, universal truth. But do you truly think I'd expect a price from my boss? Charlotte quickly denies such a cold thought. He teases that he might collect a heavy debt someday, as she pulls Valentine into a warm, crushing hug. She vows to repay him when destiny calls. Seeing her smile, he suggests a stroll through the estate. Earlier, Rammel had guaranteed that her academy enrollment would be finalized within the next 24 hours. Her residence would be ready in 2 hours, complete with a full staff to manage the massive mansion. Jack offers thanks, knowing the staff are merely spies, though their presence doesn't bother him in the slightest. During their walk, the master praises Jack, genuinely impressed by the weight behind the young boy's words. Such profound wisdom regarding identity and acceptance was the last thing she expected from a mere child. She had dismissed him as a total eccentric, but now realizes she had completely misjudged his character. Is that an insult or a compliment? Jack chuckles, deciding to take it as a win. They spot a blonde youth practicing swordsmanship nearby, a diligent commoner, yet someone seemingly beneath their notice. However, Valentine tugs Jack's ear, insisting they stop to witness the boy's desperate, solitary struggle. Resting on a bench, they observe. Despite his towering frame, the swordsman appears no older than 17. But Jack's breath catches as he senses the boy's mana sensitivity. This shouldn't be possible. He's a mere second circle commoner whose potential peaks at the fourth, a stark contrast to his imposing physique. Interested in him? Jack asks. She retorts, questioning if he fears she will take the teen as a new disciple. That wasn't it. The boy's talent is capped. He will never transcend the limits of the fourth circle. He simply wondered what caught her legendary gaze. A master like her possesses a peerless eye for hidden talent. Yet she sees nothing special. The youth continues his lonely training, carving the air with his wooden blade. Charlotte finally intervenes, her gaze fixed on the struggling youth. She notes he's been at it for hours. His body is trembling on the verge of total collapse. Seeing the marks on his neck, she points out his injuries, yet the master's fascination remains a mystery. Upon closer look, Jack freezes. The boy's mana circle was shattered and rebuilt by hand, an impossible feat of will. Valentine admires that raw, indomitable determination. She keeps her deeper thoughts veiled, watching in silence. But the protagonist already understands. He sees the true spark behind the master's curious interest. A dark mage thrives on vengeance. By reconstructing his own broken core, he demonstrated a terrifying, mysterious dedication. Every movement is sharp. Every silent strike is fueled by a reservoir of hidden, burning rage. Jack approaches and politely interrupts the session. To the blonde youth's surprise, the boy offers unsolicited guidance. You're putting too much tension in your arm. Relax the right side and fix your stance during the lunge. Stop exposing your vitals. If you don't protect your heart, you won't survive 5 seconds in a real duel. The young swordsman hesitates, his pride stung but his mind reeling from the strange boy's pinpoint accuracy. Our protagonist offers no name, acting as nothing more than a passing, casual observer. With a frame that big, do you still get bullied? Jack asks, handing the embarrassed teen a delicious high-grade potion. Why help? Jack simply shrugs. It's a small gift from a guy who's become quite wealthy. Before departing, he finally asks for the swordsman's name to seal their encounter. He is Thanos. Jack introduces himself as 𝒓𝒎𝒚, promising their destinies will surely intertwine again. Valentine questions why his apprentice is playing the saint, while Charlotte truly believes in his kindness. Thanos finally realizes the identity of his mysterious benefactor. He stares at the departing group with cold disdain. He knew that boy was the legendary genius with perfect marks, while he remained a failure with nothing. He wondered if he had misheard the name. The Jack standing before him was nothing like the rumored trash of the Marquis house. Near the academy, our protagonist followed a messenger boy sent by the Elder, a mysterious figure calling himself Joe Nobody. That alias rang a bell. It was the same pseudonym used by a member of the Earth Ants or Fire Ants mercenaries. The boy marveled at the mansion's luxury. This VIP lodging far surpassed his expectations, truly a residence for the elite. To any observer, it seemed the headmaster had personally pulled strings within the Volunteer Association to secure such a place. This made the main character wonder if that was why the messenger boy watched them with such a hollow, vacant gaze. The boy snapped back, claiming his personal emotions were entirely irrelevant to his duty. He was merely a messenger, bound strictly by the orders he had received. Jack challenged his blatant rudeness. The boy froze, rendered speechless and visibly unsettled by the sudden confrontation. That is when the hero revealed the truth. The messenger was using polymorph magic. Did the Elder even know of this deception? The revelation hit home. The boy grew tense, his restless eyes betraying his internal panic. Ignoring the awkward air, Jack was fascinated. Why were so many high circle masters gathered in such a small territory? He scrutinized the man carefully. He had to be sure this was not another spy infiltrating their ranks. When the silence became deafening, the messenger erupted in laughter, finally discarding his false facade. He demanded to know how he was caught. He had even suppressed his mana flow to remain perfectly hidden. He admitted he came in person out of pure curiosity. He had to see the boy who caught the headmaster's eye. He revealed his true identity as Bellamy Cragg, the legendary master of the Teslan Kingdom's magic tower. In a past life's war, he had been the Elder's most loyal shield, protecting him until his final breath. Now intrigued, he wanted to know how a child saw through his flawless polymorph spell. Jack shrugged. He had faced beasts with the same disguise before. His casual tone earned him a sharp scolding from the master. But the protagonist did not flinch. He stepped closer, declaring that respect must be earned through mutual courtesy. He never asked the master to hide. Thus, he felt no need to treat a deceptive stranger with any reverence. With a playful wink, Bellamy laughed it off, blaming the boy's sharp intuition. Recognizing a true genius, the master offered to teach him the secrets of magic. The proposal stunned both Jack and Valentine. Such an offer from a man of his status was utterly absurd. The boy politely declined. He already had a master. This prompted Bellamy to boast about his own unmatched reputation. The master confessed he also wanted Jack's sister as a disciple, but she had already turned him down. He insisted that having two masters was no crime. Yet, the boy's refusal remained as firm as a mountain. Jack was secretly impressed. The Tower Master's recruitment methods were certainly unconventional and bold. Valentine intervened, addressing Bellamy by name. She exposed the Tower Master's true status, making his immense power clear to everyone. She noted he once held the potential for the 10th Circle, but seemed to have abandoned that divine path long ago. Was he ambushed during his ascension to the 10th Circle? The question left the Grand Master visibly shaken. She sensed lingering traces of the 10th Circle, a phenomenon born only from a heart shattered by past failure. The doll urged him not to surrender. Even at his age, hope remained for one who had touched the heavens. The tower is for those who persist. He would need to prove his resolve to resume his legendary journey. Deeply moved, Bellamy asked for the name of the woman who saw through him. She chose to keep it hidden. Consider it a mere scar from the past, she murmured, ending the conversation with a touch of melancholy. Jack broke the silence, reminding them that Charlotte was waiting. It was time for their return. Before leaving, the boy informed the elder he would attend the upcoming opening ceremony. He was nearly dragged to the magic tower. Valentine watched Bellamy depart, feeling a flicker of genuine pity for him. One toils without talent, while the other slumbers, unaware of the monstrous potential he truly possesses. Her words piqued the protagonist. After all, she had not taught him anything new in quite some time. But the doll knew the truth. His use of darkness against Gonzalez proved he had already mastered her final lessons. That was the ultimate magic. His long and grueling training was finally complete. Bellamy's sudden visit was a shock. As they crossed the gates, the tower master turned, stealing one last look at Jack. The head maid's voice breaks his trance, sensing her young master's deeply troubled mind. He remained silent until she guessed the headmaster's words were the cause. She hit the mark. Earlier, his office shook with fury. Why did the old man yield to that brat's demands? It defied logic. How could a second circle novice crush a titan of the sixth circle? The boy was a ticking bomb, but Rammel only chuckled, calling his perspective narrow-minded. He gestured toward the girl. It seemed like simple teenage infatuation was driving his actions. Furthermore, his presence could be the kingdom's ultimate trump card. The elder wished to unravel the boy's secrets during his long stay ahead. Bellamy conceded, but a chill remained. He would obey, yet a warning lingered on his lips. He feared Rammel would be swallowed by the Marquis family's vicious political storm. But the old man deemed that war already won, leaving the master in stunned silence. He knew the Marquis well. To him, even a talented daughter was merely a political pawn. As for the second son, he was just another face among the third circle masses. There was no spark there. Phelan was truly the most mindless youth Bellamy had ever seen. The headmaster questioned his intent, only to be told his wits were finally fading. Why would a man who abandoned the Duke's seat dive into this mess? He was weary of schemes. Small favors like private rooms or skipped classes were one thing. But gifting Jack an entire mansion, that crossed every line of reason. The secret would leak eventually, making the old man laugh. 30 years of friendship revealed his heart. Rammel followed his instinct, believing a bond with this boy would yield legendary rewards. The man found it bizarre, yet the headmaster's enigmatic smile only grew. He urged Bellamy to visit the estate and witness Jack's true nature firsthand. Despite his hesitation, he chose to accept the headmaster's intriguing offer. After facing the young genius, the weight of his friend's words finally hit home. A stray thought pulled a smile from his lips, confusing the maid. He simply shrugged it off. Within the manor, the boy had already charmed the maids, the chef, and 5 elite guardians. Gathering them, he requested their strict surveillance, promising to make their job effortless. His first command was simple: meat for every meal, served with only the freshest greens. It wouldn't rival Ron's culinary magic, but it would suffice for the time being. His deadly seriousness regarding lunch terrified the guards. He would train the staff his way. A world-class chef and 5 guards with forgettable names, now dubbed the 5 Musketeers. He teased them, questioning if they were trained as shields or the elder's secret spies. It seemed every guard here had tasted the despair of a shattered mana circle. He offered them a chance to learn from the legend, who rebuilt his own shattered power. Stunned, a guard stammered, wondering if the headmaster had leaked their dark history. He shut them down, demanding action. Suddenly, Charlotte appeared, marveling at their grand new home. Now for a tour with his little partner. Keys were theirs on August 9th, with classes days away. Yet, 5 days vanished into thin air before he even realized it. It was a blissful retreat. Shopping for Charlotte and enjoying fine dining filled their carefree days. Pure joy, except for 2 minor details that kept him on edge. First, despite his perfect instincts and mana, his physical endurance was utterly pathetic. During a morning run, the blonde girl trailed him, desperate to follow in his footsteps. He teased her, threatening abandonment if she lagged, a cruel joke for the poor girl. Catching her breath, She asked if he would reunite with that man. He gave a firm nod. Second, he found Thanos training in solitude. The man's resolve was truly eternal. Jack watched him closely, a man with zero talent, yet a true genius of raw, unyielding effort. Every single day, Jack sought him out, intentionally diving deep into the massive trainee's grueling life. Those mounting scars sparked a dark curiosity. Why did his body break further with every sunrise? Using a gifted potion as a clever excuse, Jack cornered the blonde warrior to uncover the truth. Jack wore a heavy, somber expression, prompting the main character to snap at his depressing funeral face. 40 gold coins was the price, a staggering debt Thanos swore to repay with his own pride. Annoyance flared in Jack. Those fractures were deep, and only that potion could mend his shattered frame. Despite his numb, aching limbs, the warrior turned back to his sword, driven by pure obsession. No ordinary soul could endure such relentless torment, yet he remained a permanent fixture of the grounds. "Why endure such beatings?" Jack asked, his words cutting the air and leaving the warrior frozen. Even Valentine had to admit, the main character possessed a divine gift for being incredibly annoying. He leaned in playfully, asking if she didn't find his persistence at least a little charming. Pity filled her eyes. She saw the burning hatred and bottomless desire hidden beneath his scarred surface. That dark fuel pushed him forward, but the master knew it was simultaneously shattering the boy's soul. Collapse was inevitable. Witnessing this, Jack knew the doll was finally ready to make her move. Phantom was truly devoid of natural talent. Questioned on his resolve, he declared his dream to become the continent's strongest, shocking the duo. Jack didn't even wait for an explanation. He erupted into a fit of mocking, disrespectful laughter. Wounded by the mockery, the giant told Jack to laugh until his lungs gave out if he pleased. Catching his breath, the boy clarified his joy, urging the warrior not to misinterpret his sudden outburst. The path finally became clear. He approached, asking if Thanos was ready to become his little chick. Ever the helpful soul, Charlotte rushed over, offering a cool jar of water to soothe them. Offended by the brazen offer, the blonde bristled, only for Jack to offer a cold, blunt repetition. Doubting his own ears, he demanded confirmation. Did he really just use the term little chick? Jack doubled down. The term was foreign, but its insulting weight was impossible for him to ignore. Switching tactics, the main character offered a spot as a freeloader, deepening the warrior's confusion. It was a play for power. He intended to claim the teenager as his vassal. "I'm just a commoner," he argued, only to be met with a sharp, indifferent "so what?" Thanos confessed his poverty, but Jack's gaze remained steady. Money was the least of his concerns. Whispers of the volunteer house meant nothing. Jack saw through the rumors to the man before him. Desperate to decline, he begged Jack to find a worthy noble, not a talentless peasant vassal. Jack watched him, amused. This worthless commoner was still trying to protect his master's interests. His ambition was absolute. To become the greatest, he needed this specific man at his side. Doubting his own utility was nothing more than accepting a defeat that hadn't even happened yet. Ignoring the logic, Thanos spat out the bitter truth. He possessed no affinity for mana. Jack cut him off. His self-loathing blinded him to a gift far more legendary than mere mana. Talent for mana was common, a dime a dozen in a world filled with mediocre mages. Farmers died with hidden sparks, never knowing their worth. Even Jack's power lay dormant until now. But the reality Jack perceived was a different realm entirely from the eyes of common men. He witnessed the mana veins of the world, a shimmering aura that blanketed his very skin. His past self lacked the spark and drive. True effort was never a natural instinct for him. Yet Thanos possessed both will and work ethic, a rare combination that few could ever match. "Stop belittling yourself," Jack commanded. "Your talent dwarfs them all." The warrior stood frozen in silence. The moment was shattered by a sneering voice. "Look, the beggar's actually making friends now." Jack turned, his eyes narrowing at 3 arrogant brats who arrived long before the semester began. Just the thought of his wretched second brother made his stomach turn with pure disgust. Thanos urged him to retreat, but the leader of those 3 spoiled brats cut him off. "Is this beggar deaf? Didn't Mac teach you to stay in your place at this academy?" He sneered, wondering how a lowly commoner dared to resist after such a brutal thrashing. The giant shielded our hero, insisting this was his burden and pleading for him to leave. Jack's gaze turned cold and murderous as he realized these 3 were behind those wounds. The red-haired brat realized that the high-tier potion had been handed over to the peasant. It was impossible. Only the 2 of them should have known that rare potion even existed. Jack crossed his arms, asking if they had indeed robbed the man who promised repayment. He couldn't believe they had the gall to steal a gift he had personally bestowed. He considered cursing the man, but wondered how such pathetic trash managed to beat him. That new, insulting label struck the bully captain's fragile pride like a physical blow. Thanos ignored the banter, desperate for Jack to escape before things turned truly bloody. Our hero stood firm. Since they stole his potion, he was officially part of this mess. He commanded the hidden guards to show themselves, but the redhead just played the fool. With no help from the shadows, our protagonist prepared to settle the score himself. Jack lunged forward, vowing to take everything. In Teslin, true power belongs to 5 families. Not mere circle magic users, but true nobles with unimaginable wealth and ancient bloodlines. House Herman ruled the East, but their heir, 𝒏𝒎𝒏, was nothing but pure trouble. By 15, his crimes were legendary, spanning from assault to addiction and pure debauchery. Despite the drug-dealing rumors, his status as the primary heir kept his future shining bright. At the academy, even the sons of dukes let him run wild without any consequence. For fun, he chose a nameless commoner who had somehow gained entry to this school. He found the boy training in secret and decided to use him as a target. But amidst the brutal stomping, the distinct sound of a breaking bottle echoed through the air. Seeing the potion, he roared, wondering how a beggar dared to carry such a treasure. Blinded by arrogance, he pulverized Thanos, who took every hit without ever fighting back. Now Jack was unleashing hell, leaving one bully toothless and screaming in absolute terror. Before a wooden club could land, our boy's kick shattered the attacker's momentum instantly. Charlotte and Valentine watched calmly, well acquainted with Jack's habit of finding trouble. He dismantled all 3 alone, yet grumbled about needing more stamina for his training. The bloody redhead crawled forward, desperately shouting about his status as House Marger's heir. Jack remained unimpressed, more surprised that the hidden guards were still playing hide-and-seek. The brat rambled about vengeance and reports, looking completely pathetic in his desperate state. But one heavy step from Jack was enough to silence the coward's grand, empty threats. He ground his heel into that trash, finally forcing the hidden protectors to reveal themselves. They emerged in a fury, but Jack simply scoffed, noting they should have appeared sooner. When asked if he knew his victim's status, our boy didn't even blink in response. Jack asked Thanos for the trash's name. The reply was simple, 𝒏𝒎𝒏 Herman. Even while broken and bleeding on the ground, that brat's arrogance remained fully intact. He spat insults, outraged that a lowly peasant dared to speak his noble name aloud. That remark earned him a devastating boot to the jaw, ending his arrogance right then. Jack demanded answers, just as a furious henchman lunged forward, determined to crush him. He evaded the strike effortlessly, but a sudden, ominous shift in the air caught him. Another assassin was already chanting, a devastating 6-circle spell to erase him from existence. A massive explosion spell. One blast could incinerate the training field, Thanos, and the red-haired brat in a single heartbeat. Unfazed, the main character ignited his blue mana, mocking them for acting like bottom-tier thugs. His mastery had evolved, allowing him to condense his entire mana pool into a single, crushing palm. The servant's own explosion backfired as his magic rebelled. Jack smirked, relishing the flawless counterattack. The plan was perfect, yet through tear-filled eyes, the desperate man prepared one final, pathetic strike. The main character spotted a fatal flaw. This fool was repeating the exact same pattern as before. He predicted a right-hand strike, certain that a simple duck would let him evade Jack's lethal flurry. Utterly predictable, sliding beneath the guard, our hero delivered a bone-shattering blow directly to the chest. Gasping for air, the wounded servant unsheathed his blade, swinging it downward with reckless fury. With a casual step back and a swift kick, the blade flew. This idiot simply refused to learn. As the man clutched his hand, Jack vanished, reappearing behind him to crush his windpipe with a cold grip. Life drained from his body instantly. Even Jack was stunned by how quickly the struggle withered away. His mana circuits were permanently severed. A rogue mage like this was a walking disaster for the Academy's peace. Trembling and broken, the defeated man croaked out a single question. How did Jack seal his powers? "That's a secret," Jack replied coldly. "Now enjoy the shame of losing to a 14-year-old. Looming over him, Jack demanded answers. Why target Thanos? Was a commoner's life just a game to them? A victim who couldn't fight back. It was time for Jack to collect the first installment of their debt. He demanded the elixir's cost in full. A simple request, yet these cloaked fools were too dim to comply. Seething with rage, the servant spat that the elixir mattered little now that Jack had crossed the Herman family. The Herman name meant nothing. "That was my elixir," Jack growled, "and I want my damn gold." Wearing a chillingly innocent smile, Jack tilted his head, asking if the servant truly wished to disagree. 40 gold coins stolen 5 days ago. With interest, Jack's palm opened for a cool 5,000 gold coins. Thugs like these were broke. They'd better pray they had something valuable, or things were about to get ugly. 𝒏𝒆𝒏𝒄 trembled as Jack sat beside him. "Relax," Jack whispered. "Just hand over every coin and your dignity." 2,000 in cash plus 60 gold coins. In a heartbeat, Jack had filled his pockets with blood money. A cruel laugh escaped him. "Lucky you, 𝒏𝒆𝒏𝒄. If you were broke, you wouldn't be walking away." Terrified, 𝒏𝒆𝒏𝒄 stammered a question. Who was this monster? He'd never seen such power at the Academy. Amused, Jack patted his head like a stray dog. "A bit late for introductions, but you can call me Jack." The name hit like a thunderbolt. The crowd buzzed. It seemed his reputation had already preceded him. "I am 𝑨𝒓𝒎𝒚, he declared. A voice from the crowd gasped. Was he Phelan's younger brother? So these were his idiot brother's friends. Jack hated hitting kids, but for these brats, he'd make an exception. One swift motion, and his boot silenced 𝒏𝒆𝒏𝒄's mouth. The boy's face was a mask of pathetic tears. "Strip away your family name, and you're nothing," Jack spat, looking down at the shivering heap of a boy. The red-haired brat had been siphoning power from high-level mages, just to bolster his own weak mana. A total coward, Jack warned them. If they were older, they'd be at the bottom of the lake. "Remember this face. If you crave vengeance, you know where I live. Come find me in the mansion outside the gates." "But next time, I won't be so merciful," he hissed, finally pulling his foot from the boy's mouth. The man had literally wet himself in terror. Jack ignored the stench, inviting the girl to follow him instead. Walking past Thanos, Jack offered a hand. "My offer stands. Come home, our cook serves meat every single day." Birds circled the sky as Jack smirked. It was time to enjoy the grand fireworks festival in 𝒂𝒏𝒎𝒄 province. This spectacle always kicked off 2 or 3 days before the new semester began, lighting up the night sky. A perfect way to welcome fresh blood, even after such a chaotic and bloody afternoon on the fields. Here, the Empire's royalty and elite converged. A diploma meant a golden future, or so they all believed. Just pieces of meat for the grinder. Jack reflected on the blood-soaked memories of the past 5 years. The Teslan Empire's legacy was already ash. Deep down, Jack wished for nothing but their absolute, fiery destruction. Charlotte savors her treat while the mentor shatters Jack's dark trance. When she asks if he spoke, he masks his confusion with a sharp denial. The mentor scoffs at the recent Academy raids, openly mocking the pathetic state of their current security measures. Though the special law claims all students are equal, She knows how twisted ideologies eventually poison that noble dream. With a look of pure disdain, she confesses her secret. She's been hoarding legendary dragon blood and ancient bones. The mention of the Teslan Empire stirs Jack's hidden memories, yet he swallows the urge to reveal his past life. Vibrant explosions paint the night sky as Charlotte breaks the silence, questioning the true source of his mysterious power. He claims years of grueling experience, prompting her chilling question, "Exactly how many lives have you taken?" Jack nods calmly, dropping a bombshell. He returned from the future precisely 20 years ago to rewrite history. He reveals that Ron was the first to learn this secret, and his tragic death was no mere accident. Offering another truth, the boy admits that this current life marks their very first encounter. In his previous life, their paths only crossed in the monster forest, the final sanctuary for the vampires. When she asks why he chose her, Jack explains he saw a warrior's burning spirit deep within her eyes. He senses an agonizing past and a heart hungry for change. Training begins tomorrow, sparking a fire of excitement in her. His plan involves forging her spirit and testing her control, a revelation that leaves his new disciple utterly stunned. Beneath the shimmering fireworks, Charlotte beams with gratitude while Jack wears a satisfied, knowing smirk. He knows the road ahead is paved with blood, but for tonight, he chooses peace over the coming war. Far away, 𝒏𝒕 descends into madness, obliterating his quarters in a storm of unbridled, jealous fury. The noble spits the protagonist's name with venom, trembling as he recalls that boy's terrifying, predatory gaze. Surrounded by wreckage, he screams in shame. How could a mere 14-year-old boy strike such paralyzing terror into his heart? Vowing a bloody revenge, his ragged breath and stumbling steps reveal a complete and pathetic emotional collapse. Day 2 of the new semester begins. Jack hunts for Ron, craving those legendary steaks. Suddenly, his world spins as a violent tremor seizes his body. That red sauce Charlotte is devouring, it is actually human juice. Turning pale, Jack still asks if she is enjoying the meal. She chirps with joy, but Jack's eyes drift to Thanos, who sits hunched and broken near the gate. Sensing the main character's presence, the fallen student barely lifts his gaze, weakly begging for a lifeline. Without a moment of hesitation, our hero beckons the boy inside. He offers warmth and a meal, shattering Thanos' composure. To save his pride, Jack jokes about the cook's heavy-handedness with onions. The following morning, Thanos tries to apologize for his behavior, but the generous boy dismisses it with the grace of a true leader. Jack avoids prying to honor the boy's privacy, though he smells the foul taint of a mysterious elixir. While observing his muscular guide's relentless training, the young master is greeted by Charlotte's sudden appearance. Clad in proper gear and burning with resolve, the determined girl stands ready for her promised path to power. With a confident smile, the legendary teacher prepares to mold his students' destiny in their first true lesson. By late afternoon, Charlotte collapses in total exhaustion. Jack offers praise, impressed by the raw grit she displayed today. She barely groans in response, yet her eyes sparkle as she asks, is she finally tapping into the world's mana? With a warm, approving smile, the boy confirms her success, congratulating his disciple on a feat well done. He had his suspicions before, but now he is certain. This girl possesses a truly terrifying, innate potential. Mastering high-level mana circles in just 10 hours is unheard of. For a beginner, this is nothing short of legendary. Charlotte accepts the end of the session, struggling to her feet to make the long trek back home. However, her legs buckle after only a few shaky steps. She collapses onto a bench, dead to the world. The mentor asks if he will tell her that beginners usually take days. If it were her choice, she would have made her a disciple instantly. Even without help, this genius would have succeeded within a single day. A glowing magic circle erupts beneath her, drawing mana from the atmosphere to forge barriers and store energy. By funneling his own mana into her, the protagonist jump-started her awakening, a dangerous method only he could master. Even the genius admits his own struggle, making her sudden awakening seem truly legendary. The mentor is baffled. Jack seeks no reward, displaying a purity rarely seen in this cruel world. Seeing Thanos in tears again, Jack's blunt comment forces the giant to frantically hide his weeping face. The master sees through the facade, instantly sensing the suffocating walls of stagnation closing in on him. Drowning in despair, Thanos remains silent, his spirit crushed by the weight of potential failure. Jealousy gnaws at him. He prays she lacks talent, fearing he'll be overshadowed in every single aspect. "Did you expect the path of the strongest to be easy?" Jack asks, shattering Thanos' resolve completely. Our hero sighs, wondering how such a towering warrior could possess the heart of a sensitive child. Jack's words spark a flame. No true knight would abandon his destiny because of a girl's brilliance. With a comforting hand, Jack promises his dream is reachable if he can endure the hellish path. For the first time, someone sees his potential, igniting a fierce, unfamiliar fire deep within his soul. Mocked for his naivety and ridiculed by all, he clung to his impossible dream with unshakable faith. Recalling the shadows of his own past, Jack demands to know the source of the man's torment. Thanos lunges forward, seizing Jack's hands in a display of gratitude for the boy's unwavering belief. Maintaining his composure, Jack offers one truth: while talent is fickle, hard-earned skills never betray their master. Amidst his thoughts, a sharp snap echoes from the shadows, the unmistakable sound of an approaching intruder. The giant senses Jack's sudden tension. An uninvited guest lurks nearby, but who would dare strike now? A cold chill grips Jack. He's been targeted again, precisely when the weight of the world is heaviest. Like a shadow in the night, a dangerous presence arrived at the absolute worst possible moment. Jack's eyes ignite with a terrifying bloodlust. "Take her and stay back," he commands with cold steel. Hesitation flickers in the knight's eyes, but he obeys, rising quickly to protect the sleeping girl. "I knew you were coming to die," Jack mutters, "but I didn't expect you to be this impatient." His gaze pierces the dark, spotting the leader while 5 scouts already lay incapacitated on the ground. Motionless but still breathing, they were mere toys before his overwhelming and silent power. Charlotte sleeps soundly while the mentor arrives, yawning and oblivious to the carnage that just unfolded nearby. Completely blind to the impending danger. She asks about dinner just as 𝑦𝒓𝒎𝒚 emerges, flanked by a swarm of ominous, cloaked figures. Assassins lurk in the branches and shadows, their killing intent masked by 𝑦𝒓𝒎𝒚's twisted, arrogant smirk. "It's been far too long, 𝑗ack𝑉𝒎𝒚," he sneers, dripping with malice and provocative intent. Mana surges around Jack like a storm. "One more step," he warns, "and your life is forfeit." This red-headed snake was the future Marquis, a man drunk on his own perceived divinity. He understood the ultimate law: only the strong survive, and soon all this power would be his. Why let such a threat breathe? 𝑦𝒓𝒎𝒚's mind churns with a scheme to bury Jack forever. By framing Jack for the first strike, he intends to ignite a bloody war between 2 legendary houses. Beside him stands Benjamin, the masked master of the Pental Guild and a terrifying 9th Circle mage. Even with Jack's monstrous talent, facing a 9th Circle master was a leap into certain death. The trap is sprung. With the witnesses cornered, 𝑦𝒓𝒎𝒚 asks if his hired killer is ready to strike. Benjamin observes the girl. Her mana heart is nearing its final, explosive completion. He smirks. Their 9-hour delay was a fatal mistake, as the formation should have taken 2 days. The staff are marked for death. One order is all it takes to wipe them from existence. They aim to strike, while the 𝒏𝒄𝒄 family's heavy hitters are distracted by other urgent crises. Panic erupts as flames consume the Duke's basement, a perfect, chaotic diversion for their cold-blooded assault. With reinforcements busy fighting the inferno, the masked mage signals his men that the time is now. The trap is perfect, but suddenly Jack's roar pierces the air, signaling his own devastating counterattack. Warriors storm forward for a 500,000 gold bounty, their war cries shaking the very earth. Dietrich sneers, believing 𝒏𝒊𝒈 is finished, until a massive, wall-like ally shields the boy. With white knuckles and a trembling blade, the blonde warrior begs his master to flee immediately. He shoulders the blame for their failure, vowing to sacrifice himself so Jack can escape. Jack watches their desperate loyalty with a smirk, finding such selfless devotion almost hilariously naive. This warmth is a foreign sensation for one who once perished in cold, hollow isolation. Squaring his shoulders, the main character steps forward, commanding them to stay back and trust him. With the stride of a conqueror, he prepares to unleash a mana-charged explosion until his mentor playfully pinches his cheek to stop him. She glides gracefully to the earth, standing defiantly before the shocked noble, leaving Jack wondering if she intends to claim these lives for herself. The arrogant noble mocks the living doll, unaware that her gaze now ignites like twin lanterns. Light erupts and smoke swirls, revealing the breathtaking form of a legendary heroine from history. The titan who conquered the world returns after a 400-year hiatus, shattering Dietrich's composure. Tilting his head in awe, the protagonist beams at her return, opening his mouth to offer a grand, triumphant greeting. Instead, a heavy fist connects with his face, sending him spiraling into the frozen dirt. Clutching his throbbing jaw, the boy cries out, baffled by this sudden act of aggression. She declares it penance for his insolence and for dragging her from the cave against her will. In that moment, he had acted with total selfishness, completely ignoring her wishes and words. Yet, even while being scolded, he wears a satisfied grin. He truly missed her terrifying presence. After accepting his punishment, the boy turns to Dietrich and coldly demands his fur coat. Humiliated and trembling, the arrogant lord has no choice but to surrender his expensive garment. Jack tenderly drapes the coat over his mentor, noting the biting chill of the mountain air. Despite the scolding, his conviction remains unshaken. He does not regret bringing her into the light. When pressed, he stands firm. His actions were necessary, and the results speak for themselves. She asks if he'd preferred her to rot in peace, but he knows her heart better. He argues that all living things crave the world, and his master is no different. He saw through her facade. Deep down, she yearned to break free from those ancient chains. She had been burned by trust before, becoming a prisoner within her own magnificent creation. Dietrich's men shiver in terror as the mentor looks upon her student with heavy gratitude. The young man is stunned. He always assumed she viewed him as a mere nuisance. Giddy from the rare praise, he watches as abyssal smoke begins to dance around her hand. Mana surges violently as she prepares to execute those who threatened her disciple. Dietrich panics instantly. Ancient incantations echo as black resin stains the heavens, warping the very fabric of reality. Through a thick purple haze, the main character watches the world dissolve into a chaotic nightmare. The chant continues to resonate, heralding the return of the resin as a gargantuan, spectral skull manifests behind her. Miles away in the Tolkien Empire, a distant master shudders, recognizing a sensation long buried. He dismisses it as a ghost, yet the mana currents around him scream of an impossible truth. Deep within the Black Sea, shadowy figures gather in frantic whispers, sensing a world-altering shift. The signature is unmistakable. The soul energy of Valentine Milos has returned to the living realm. An old wound throbs in the dragon's chest, a haunting reminder of the woman he feared. Her 410-year reign over their world defies logic, leaving the powerful in shock. In Jack's amber eyes, the black tar transforms into a monstrous skull with gaping jaws. A soul-piercing shriek erupts, leaving only the silhouette of a dark goddess with eyes of flame. A titanic shockwave shatters their advance, leaving the noble paralyzed by bone-chilling dread. A sinister, unnatural chill creeps up his legs, signaling his end. Nearby, mercenaries scream as their limbs turn to ash. Dietrich finally realizes his fate is sealed. His hands begin to decay as a skeletal grip reaches out from the abyss. Driven by madness, he offers vast fortunes to beg for his miserable life. The mentor sneers at his pleas. His body dissolves into a radiant celestial portal. Charlotte gasps, her hand masking pure disbelief. Valentine looms like a final boss, yet gently pats the terrified girl's head. As Thanos stands stunned, the blonde beauty places a hand over her heart. She defends Jack's brilliance, making the legendary mentor smile in amused concession. The boy flashes a cheeky smirk, earning a playful flick from his master. Jack offers Charlotte a drink, while tasking Thanos with the fallen soldiers. The little vampire whines for a ride, forcing the blonde to sigh. Praising his friend's loyalty, the protagonist turns to the mentor with sudden gravity. Valentine Milo's gaze turns sharp as she weighs his words from earlier. She asks if he remembers his bold claims while she watched him silently. The mention of dragon remains suggests a dark path toward forbidden immortality research. Grim face. She fears these grotesque experiments are the legacy of those forbidden ancient studies. The boy nods, confirming her sharp mind has pierced the hidden truth. Man's hunger for eternity has always been fueled by a thirst for youth. Ancient scholars once proposed a radical path. Why not mimic the immortal dragons? Species like vampires and dragons possess biology that defies the flow of time. He describes hellish labs where bloodied scrolls detailed the fusion of different species. Immortality remained elusive, but humanity stole elven powers at a soul-shattering price. These cursed subjects gained mere years of power before a gruesome, early death. Darkly, he reveals the Tolkien Empire has pushed hybrid survival to 30 years. Guilt consumes the mentor, who thought she'd purged this evil 4 centuries ago. She recalls stepping barefoot into that frozen hell, surrounded by cursed research papers. Every document was burned, and every groveling abomination was put to the sword. Her heart weighs heavy. She should have slaughtered the dragon lords as well. 2 traitors sold their own kin, offering their bloodline to these horrific experiments. When questioned on their identities, the protagonist answers without a moment's hesitation. Only 2 dragon lords manipulate souls. Their blood, with 10 circle mages, creates unstoppable monsters. She pauses. After processing the truth, the ancient relic asks her student about his ultimate goal. He aims for the 6th circle by next year to storm the Tolkien Empire. He follows her path of total destruction. He will erase every lab, while Thanos clumsily hauls away the unconscious servants. She rolls up her sleeve, questioning why they should wait for a break. His hesitation proves his worth, confirming he is truly a disciple of her lineage. He reminds her of her vow of neutrality, claiming this war as his alone. Resolve shifts. She feels a divine duty to ensure these abominations are erased from history forever. She will march on the Empire now. No one can defy a mentor's absolute authority. Toppling that lab will spark chaos among the radicals plotting to unite the continent through twisted experiments. He realizes she has conquered her past traumas, while he continues to bear that heavy resentment all alone. Then he makes a startling request, to tear open a dimensional rift and reclaim a specific legendary blade. Without pause, she summons a violet rift with a mere wave, and a blade of breathtaking beauty emerges from the void. The carrion sword, forged by dwarf kings and mermaid artisans, gleams with a familiar light in his grip. Valentine reveals an intricate white mask, a relic capable of masking one's identity and manipulating their aura. Asked of its origin, she deflects, claiming she merely plucked it from a common market eons ago. Donning the mask, he quips about peeping into bathhouses, earning a swift, stinging strike for his childish insolence. Setting the coordinates, his eyes ignite with a sudden, sharp recognition. It leads to the Gunnar Empire's ruined capital, where the lab hides beneath sacred, ancient ruins. Opening the portal, she offers her hand and asks if he's ready. His only answer is a laugh. Elsewhere, a scientist gloats over the high praise he received from the legendary 𝒃𝒐 himself. The doctor trembles when human testing is mentioned, desperately citing the stellar results found in animal subjects. Frantic talk of cellular activation is silenced by a single, commanding gesture. Hanks has only one question: when will the real experiment finally commence? Anxiously wringing his hands, the scientist demands more magical test subjects. Asked to name these hybrids, he answers instantly. Half-bloods. The name causes Hanks to grin with dark satisfaction. Before departing, the protagonist inquires if any other guests are expected at this hidden facility today. Rubbing his chin, the scientist confirms that no other meetings were scheduled. Standing face to face, Hank senses a strange mana surge before the earth begins to violently quake. Suddenly, the floor gives way. Hanks barely reacts as the room is torn apart by collapsing stone. The noble desperately weaves a shield, but the doctor's agonizing screams pierce through the settling dust. His barrier shatters. Spitting blood, he struggles to breathe while his servant asks if the assault is over. Too late. Infernal flames erupt, threatening to incinerate the defenseless doctor caught within the line of fire. Hanks, shaking with exhaustion, manifests one final shield before being hurled backward by a massive impact. The shield holds, but the shock leaves him coughing up blood that stains the cold floor. Glancing down, he spots the scientist's corpse lying broken on the torchlit floor below. It's a grisly sight as bodies litter the floor, with dark fluids slowly dripping onto the stone. The hero points at the dripping remains, and a cold, murderous fury ignites within his soul. He smiles grimly, requesting to lead the charge. Valentine then summons the same devastating hellfire once again. Lighting the darkness, the boy marvels at the spell's power, shielding his face from the searing heat of the blaze. Now on the third floor's ruins, the mentor searches for targets, while our hero approaches a shackled dragon. He eyes the beam piercing its chest, triggering a low, menacing warning growl. He remembers finding this creature in his past life, broken and pleading for the sweet release of death. Smiling now, he unsheathes the Salarian's sword with unwavering resolve, ignoring the dragon's terrifying roars. His movements are lethally precise. The blade carving arcs through the air, shattering the heavy chains into useless scraps of metal. The dragon falls, spent. With deep compassion, the boy reaches out. 18 years have passed since their meeting. The hero kneels, gently embracing the creature's cold, scaly neck. He whispers soft comforts, acknowledging the beast's agonizing years of torment and utter exhaustion. Watching the creature, he recalls it once begging for death, questioning if it still wishes to remain a subject. Forsaken by its kin, its wounded paws were cruelly pierced by iron stakes. To them, this beast is merely prized livestock. Tears fall as the dragon hears its skin became armor. Jack details the torture meant to shatter its soul. He offers a choice: freedom in a distant land. A weak murmur swells into a roar of defiance. Jack recalls a mercy kill from his previous life. Spellbound, Hankies arrives, sending the dragon into a state of panic. They ignore the noble, fueling his volcanic rage. Magic circles flare, yet Jack only offers a smirk. His murderous intent forces the adult to shrink back. A knee strike shatters the blade in his spirit. The mentor watches the one-sided slaughter with interest. Pure fury reduces the enemy's weapon to shards. The noble is discarded, while the dragon finds hope. Hankies creates a crater before falling into the abyss. Jack sighs at the continent's so-called strongest man. Shaking, the noble asks who this monster truly is. That cold laughter is more chilling than any blade. He foretells a knight who will one day end him. The noble charges, but the blade stays perfectly steady. Amber eyes reflect a cold, calculating malice. A flash of steel sends a hand flying away. Blood sprays as the noble becomes a punching bag. Brutal kicks send the man crashing to the stone. He cleans his sword, mocking the man's pathetic strength. Jack whispers secrets of the prince's doomed, bloody faction. Past life memories resurface. He remembers the heads he claimed in another time. Glowing chains lash out, claiming the disciple's limb. One last thing remains before they depart the scene. Back at the mansion, the mask finally comes off. He looks bored, the violence already a distant memory. He asks for the creature's true name with intent. A trembling voice whispers a name long since forgotten. He strokes the scales, rejecting the name of cowards. From now on, your name is simply Shell. The dragon rests, finding peace on soft, healing cushions. Valentine questions his plans regarding the dragon lords. Jack wonders who will be the first to kneel. His gaze holds a warmth meant only for her. He admires the woman who shaped this entire world. Kneeling, he promises to carry the weight of her sacrifices. She retires, leaving her dusty cloak in his care. As she returns from the bath, damp tresses glistening over her shoulders. He pours out praises, earning a playful nudge to bathe next. But removing his shirt reveals a tragic sight, a child's body mapped with brutal scars. He applies elixirs to fresh wounds, his body already craving their addictive magic. Asked of his plans for the night, he lingers by her bed, dodging questions until her piercing gaze reveals deep worry. Playing the part of a fragile child, he plays up his aches, admitting Ron told him she stayed by his side for 3 whole days. Now he would guard his sleepy mentor. He watches her tranquil face, gently pulling the blanket over her tired form. Amidst the midnight stillness, he wonders, what if they'd met 400 years ago at her birth? The scandalous thought sends a crimson flush to his cheeks. Kneeling there, he stares at the woman feared as a monster necromancer. To him, however, she is the world's most beautiful masterpiece. Hours earlier, deep in the duchy's cold dungeons, a chained man sneers at the Tower Lord. He asks, was spying on the leader for 10 years truly a sin? The leader had offered him nothing but kindness, making this vile betrayal a death sentence in the Tower Lord's eyes. Even bound and stripped of his mana circles, the prisoner flashes a defiant, insolent grin, radiating eerie confidence. He mocks the Tower Lord, asking if he's truly blind to the truth or just playing the fool. Brutus demands a look at the past decade. Why have so many 10th Circle mages vanished from the kingdom? The air chills as he exposes the lies, recruiting mages for monster hunts that were nothing but a deadly ruse. The Tower Lord vows the torture rack will break him, yet the cell echoes with only hysterical, haunting laughter. The man's bravado is chilling. If he's a traitor, why hasn't the agony begun already? 5 days in a dungeon, yet he remains unscathed, a jarring contrast to the fate of the kingdom's foes. Ascending the stairs, the Tower Lord's heart sinks. Has the rot of corruption already devoured the kingdom from within? 4 hours later, a hellish blaze erupts in the depths, just as Dietrich prepares his strike against Jack. Arriving at the ruins, the Tower Lord finds only ash, assuming Brutus has perished in the inferno. By dawn, the sight of the dragon shell sparks a chaotic wave of shock among the allies. Charlotte recoils in visible unease, while Thamos points a trembling finger, stammering, "Is that truly a dragon?" The hero steps in, soothing their fears by explaining that Shell is no ordinary, mindless beast. The dragon trembles like a hunted prey, calming only when the boy offers a warm, reassuring touch. He vows to protect Shell, musing that the world's absolute truths are often nothing but convenient lies. Truly, no common steel could scar a dragon. These majestic, blessed beasts carry the heavens' favor for a reason. It was likely that wretch Hannes who performed those vile experiments, but the hero delivered a satisfying, crushing retribution. Having witnessed his power against his tormentor, the dragon gazes at the boy with eyes filled with holy reverence. The boy wonders if Shell sees a new man in him, as if he'd evolved during his deep slumber. Not that he lacks his usual charm. As he pulls away, the mighty creature bows its head in absolute submission, a far cry from its broken past. In a past life, Shell was a hollow shell, rotting in filth without a flicker of strength or hope. Pity stirs within the hero as he strokes those scales. Mentally, this dragon is just a child of barely 8 years. He chuckles at the irony. Only the broken and the mistreated seem to flock to him, forming a circle of outcasts. The mentor unleashes a surge of healing magic. The onlookers gape in shock as the dragon's shattered paws knit back together. But the miracle has just begun. Valentine pushes the spell further. Shell screams in agony as dragon limbs contort and shift into a human shape. From the light emerges a fragile girl. Charlotte clings to Thamos in terror, while the mentor wears a satisfied smirk. The hero is momentarily entranced by this new form, until the mentor snaps him back with news of the ceremony. He tells the now human shell to rest, promising a swift return while pondering what a dragon actually eats. Mentioning meat. The girl's eyes ignite with hunger, prompting the boy to order the finest steak the cook can prepare. He bids her watch the horizon from the roof if boredom strikes, already weaving plans for her grand future. Fragments of a bygone era resurface, memories of the Academy's birth in the infant kingdom of Teslin. The director delivered a chilling omen, warning of falling kingdoms instead of the hope the protagonist remembered. His prophecy of hidden shadows and internal rot felt like a dark, inevitable truth, especially after the laboratory was reduced to absolute rubble the previous day. The old man clearly knows too much, foretelling how 10th Circle radicals will bathe Tolkien in blood. His melancholy drowned the ancestors' glory, leaving the young students shivering in utter confusion. As the hero watched his peers absorb the darkness, a realization struck. Every student here possessed the spark to rewrite this destined, pitch-black future. The ceremony ended, and the Academy students scattered to resume their mundane daily lives. Jack stretched his aching limbs, noting the first day's schedule was blessedly empty. He planned to thank the director, genuinely pleased with the grand estate he'd been gifted. Suddenly, a familiar silhouette appeared, and he shouted his older brother's name. The brother flinched as Jack waved, receiving only a cold, distant murmur in return. Ignoring the icy reception, Jack clapped his back, demanding a shred of basic respect. He claimed their shared bloodline required manners, his gaze turning lethal as the brother hesitated. Leaning in, Jack's voice dropped to a lethal, private whisper. "I'll dismember you here if you forget your place again," Jack hissed dangerously. Instantly, he swapped his killing intent for a bright, casual smile before the crowd. With a friendly pat, he watched Phelan flee like a terrified, cornered rabbit. Charlotte approached, curiously asking if that pathetic boy was actually a friend. "Blood doesn't mean love," Jack explained as the little vampire stared in bewilderment. She looked up, her expression shifting as she questioned her own place in his heart. Flustered, Jack joked about her early puberty and these heavy philosophical inquiries. "Your family," he admitted, a rare warmth lighting up the young girl's face. To Jack, family were those he chose to protect. Thanos and Charlotte were now his. Meanwhile, Phelan bolted, his friends whispering about his strange, trembling behavior. They noted the shift. Jack now held absolute psychological dominance over his elder. Phelan shivered, unable to fathom why he feared the boy he once bullied. He sprinted away, leaving his confused companions to question his mental stability. Rage flared, Phelan turned to fight, but froze before Jack's overwhelming, predatory aura. The challenge died in his throat as he lowered his head in total defeat. "Boring," Jack scoffed, watching his brother tremble despite his supposed growth. A toxic cocktail of hate and newfound fear boiled within Phelan's chest. Distracted by Brutus's demise, he barely noticed the cold cookies in his grip. The news of the death didn't spark even a flicker of surprise. Instead, Jack's icy indifference toward Brutus's fate left the old director utterly speechless. Jack shifted focus, thanking the man for his new property instead. He praised the mansion's chef, whose culinary magic had completely won over Charlotte. The director's silence felt heavy, but he stopped Jack before he could depart. With cookies stuffed in his face, Jack listened to a shocking new proposal. A transfer to the Magic College. Jack scoffed, never intending to follow standard paths. The director offered a deal: switch to magic and enjoy a drastically reduced schedule. Jack counteroffered with iron resolve. He would attend only one day a week. They settled on 2 days. Jack only wanted the diploma, not their basic lessons. His true target, the Academy's legendary vault, housing 400-year-old magical artifacts. Though his desired blade was missing, perhaps Bellamy Craig could forge something even greater. Seeing both giants clamor to recruit him, Jack smirked. A king-to-be is never someone's subordinate. When the director offered a marquisate for his genius, Jack roared with laughter, clutching his sides. Once his laughter subsided, the boy rejected the noble title. Being a marquis was beneath his grand design. He turned, but the elder halted him. Probing eyes asked about yesterday's village incident. Recalling the unconscious servants, Jack feigned total ignorance. Every question from the director felt like a sharp, psychological interrogation. Jack claimed he was merely checking on staff who forgot the food. 𝒏𝒄𝒏 had moved them inside to clear the way. He dismissed it as a simple internal scuffle. To the seasoned old man, it sounded like a blatant, flimsy lie. Yet the director accepted it with a fatherly nod. Conflict is how young lions learn to grow. Jack turned to leave. At the exit, a painting of a girl striking a demon captured his attention. Valentine lingered inside. The director's instincts, sharpened by decades of politics, sensed a deep, hidden mystery. In his long life among kings, he had never felt an overwhelming aura like Valentine Milos's. She brushed the flowers by the window, her voice silk as she praised the director's impressive performance. Her every movement was singular and otherworldly. As she reached the window, the director knew for certain. She was a peerless existence. Valentine remarked that a general's rank suited him better than an academic's chair. Perhaps in his youth, before the Tesla empire became a breeding ground for such hidden monsters. Could he truly shield all these talents? Her majestic, sovereign gaze completely captivated the old man. She pressed for an answer, but the silence shattered as the door was kicked wide open. Jack returned to fetch his mentor. She grumbled about their oath, while the boy cited her worrying delay. On the streets, Valentine's beauty drew every eye. She declined the vendors' offerings with whimsical, creative excuses. "I developed a flower allergy today," she teased, "and I have had far too much tea already." Heartbroken merchants watched them pass. The director's desire to make her a student was written on his face. Suddenly, Valentine's tone shifted. "Do you trust Director 𝒓𝒚?" The answer was clearer than the stars. Jack trusted only his chosen family. Valentine knew better than anyone that he was a wolf among men. His relationship with the old director was a cold dance of mutual necessity and shadows. The mentor understood Jack would never be a pawn. He was the one playing the game. She followed him faithfully, yet the true purpose of this specific visit remained a mystery to her. Their destination was the 𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒏 Guild, a strange den for someone whose primary target was Jack's fortune. This was the hub of mercenaries and hunters, where blood and service were traded for gold. Jack knew a high-circle mage cost a fortune, likely the same blood money Dietrich had paid out. But what happens when both the client and the assassin die? That question led them here. A polite attendant greeted the mentor first, but Jack stepped forward, taking total command of the room. He demanded the manager and a full refund. Then he whispered the code. "Last night, 9th Circle assassination." Those words turned the girl's face ghostly white, and a sharp scream escaped her lips. Her colleague muffled her cry before she could name him. Jack met them with a predator's sharp smile. His gaze turned lethal as he leaned over the counter, his presence suffocating the trembling staff. The girl gasped Dietrich, and the trap snapped shut. Jack realized just how stupid Dietrich truly was. Instead of a direct confrontation, the coward had used the guild as a pathetic shield. The air grew cold. Under Jack's crushing pressure, the staff shook, unable to offer any more words. The boy gave a 5-minute ultimatum for the leader, flipping an hourglass to mark their doom. If time ran out, he would erase the 𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒏 Guild from the map, regardless of its fame. Valentine watched her pupil, intrigued by his absolute determination to crush an entire organization. Jack explained that these guilds were mere middlemen, lacking the backbone of a true institution. He needed to find Dietrich's hidden hire, and the attendant's terror had already confirmed his suspicions. Her recognition of him proved she knew the contract. Using a guild for assassination was a sloppy death sentence. Jack knew Dietrich wouldn't dirty his own hands so easily. The guild members stare at him as if he were a walking ghost. Inside, the manager enjoys his grapes until the chilling news finally reaches him. He pales at the name 𝒓𝒎𝒏. How is that boy still breathing? The trembling maid reports the 5-minute warning. He plans to raise the guild. In 34 years, he has never known failure. The plague mask assassins never miss. Their leader is a 9th circle mage, yet the boy stands before them unscathed. As the hourglass runs dry, the leader finally emerges, palms sweating in fear. Vero, head of the 𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒏 guild, offers a greeting with a trembling voice. Jack ignores the tea. It is time to cut straight to the bone. With a fake smile, the leader asks if the young lord seeks a contract. Jack crosses his arms. This conversation is just the opening act. He spots the flicker of greed in the manager's eyes. The fool smells profit. That greed vanishes instantly when Jack mentions the failed execution from last night. He demands the truth. Did the kill order pass through these halls? Vero hesitates. Imperial law shields these guilds as neutral brokers of death. Blood for gold. The guild is the bridge between killers and clients. 𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒏 is a titan in the empire, whispered to have ties to the throne. Then comes the lethal question. What is the price on his head? What did Dietrich pay? The leader stutters, sending a chill through the air. He wants a number. His freezing glare makes the man shiver. Jack loathes repeating himself. His patience is thin as a blade. While the leader babbles about clauses and fees, Jack's kick shatters the air. He isn't here for talk. He is here for a debt of blood. The assassins are dead, but the gold remains. Jack wants every last coin. 1 week. If a single gold piece is missing, this guild burns to ash. He leaves a final warning. Do not touch a single cent for administrative fees. A single coin discrepancy, and he will return. The leader stands frozen. As they depart, Jack smiles at his mentor. A very productive visit indeed. He has his own shadows to chase. Meanwhile, the leader collapses in despair. He curses the day he accepted Dietrich's cursed request. Noble feuds are always lethal. He has provoked a monster far beyond his league. That is it for today. To see the next chapter, hit that notification bell and stay tuned to 𝒏𝒆 for more.